Good evening and welcome to the Hartland Township Planning Commission meeting of October 8th, 2015. We'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Keith, would you take roll, please?
Certainly. Joe Kalini. Sue Grissom.
Here.
Mike Mitchell. Tom Murphy.
Here.
Jeff Newsom. Here. Larry Fox.
Here. Next up is approval of our meeting agenda.
Support.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Newsom, second from Commissioner Murphy. Are there any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, approval of our September 24th, 2015 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Grissom, a second from Commissioner Murphy. Are there any changes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, item 6, call of the public. Anyone this evening? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Heidi Meisterfeld, and I live on Matthew Court. I've written down what I wanted to say. I knew this day would come. I feel like a criminal on trial. We, the residents of Heritage Meadows, have presented our evidence and concerns over the past few months about the proposed gas station on the corner of Clark and 59. You, the jury, have been deliberating, and now I sit here waiting for the verdict. But before the verdict is read, I've decided to tell you the reason why I moved to Hartland, especially this subdivision. I lived in Rochester Hills, and my parents lived in Howell. For over 20 years, I drove on M59 to their house. One day, I saw the construction of Heritage Meadows begin, and I asked my husband to turn in. I soon found out that I could not afford to live here. As the homes were finished, I would occasionally drive through the stub on the way to my parents' house. They were beautiful. I always felt that I could never afford to live here. My husband eventually took a job at General Motors in Milford, and we continued to drive from Rochester Hills to Howell to visit my parents. There was never a time that we drove by that we didn't discuss the want for living here. My father became ill, and I was driving to his house every day to be with him. It soon became apparent that we needed to move closer to my parents' house. Without a second thought, I knew where I wanted to move to, Heritage Meadows. After living in Rochester for 23 years, we now are in a better financial place that we could afford to live here. My father died during the moving process. He never got to see my dream home. Now my dream home is being jeopardized with noise, smell, and the ability to safely drive out of my sub onto M59 due to the inability to provide a traffic light that would help alleviate the traffic problem. Yes, that property is commercial and has been for 30 years. Yes, the property owners have a right on their return of investment. I am here to say that I am a property owner too, and I have a right to my return on investment. All of the homeowners could not be here tonight, but I have 84 homeowner signatures that voice that they have the right of return on their investment too. Mug and Bob's own many gas stations, not just this one. This one gas station is not their only investment, not their only dream of a lifetime. We are the homeowners. This is our one dream, our one large investment, and our one life. A few weeks ago, Mug and Bob's asked for a meeting. They wanted to hear our concerns. We spent the first 15 minutes talking about how they came up with their name and how one of his elderly relatives moved here to help out. They spent the next 15 minutes covering things that had already been covered: the traffic light, the trees, turn lane, and that it didn't matter about the gas or the oil runoff because the wetlands were already polluted from the M59 runoff, along with the runoff from Roby and its businesses. The main concern of the residents was the traffic light and the 6-foot-tall berm or wall that would separate us. I looked over the resubmitted plans, and Bug and Bob's are asking for a 3-foot-tall berm. A 3-foot-tall berm will not allow to prevent any of the noise or to prevent easier access to our neighborhood. It would have been nice if we had been heard at the meeting. I guess I'm thick-headed. I thought that if we as a community came to you with our concerns, it would matter. I thought that pointing out zoning and ordinance violations would matter, but I've learned that it doesn't. The lawyers I've spoke to told me it would take thousands of dollars to make a difference. I thought that was sad. Shouldn't 84 voting, tax-paying homeowners make a difference? But it doesn't. The gas station will be built, and Hartland will be one step closer to becoming a truck stop. According to the 2010 census, Hartland has 14,663 citizens. Hartland does not need another gas station. I watched the other gas stations come and go over the past 20-plus years. If the need was there, Meyer would have already put one in. Hartland needs things in this community that this community can use, like a Petco, a hair salon, a furniture store, a sporting goods store, anything that would attract its citizens to, instead of the need to drive away from. You said no to Menards due to it being too close and too loud for the nearby homeowners. Well, we are asking you again to consider that they are too close and too loud to these homeowners.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close call to the public. We have no public hearing this evening, so what I'd like to do is open agenda item number 8A, which is site plan number 533, the revision or the revised plan for the Mug and Bops. It's a site plan with 2 special land uses. So if the applicant wants to come up, what I'm going to do is we'll turn it over to our planning director right now, introduce the project again, bring us up to date. We'll have the applicant run through their proposal again, and then at that point, we'll get the Planning Commission involved with questions and answers. So, with that being said, we'll turn it over to our Planning Director, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the proposal before the Planning Commission this evening is one that has been in front of the Planning Commission in a formal context once before for a public hearing that was held on July 16th of this year. It is for the Mug and Bops gas station, which also will include a convenience store, a drive-through dual-branded Dunkin' Donuts / Baskin Robbins, and then obviously the fuel sales component. Because it has a drive-through fast food component and because it has a fuel sales component, this project is considered a special land use, actually 2 special land uses for the general commercial zoning district for which the subject property is zoned. Like with any special land use, the Planning Commission makes a recommendation if they so choose, and then the Township Board ultimately has the authority to approve a special land use. And that is what the applicant is seeking this evening, is site plan approval along with a recommendation of approval for 2 special land uses, again, the gas station sales component and the drive-through fast food component. Public hearing was held on July 16th. That is a requirement of any special land use. Those public hearing requirements were met. Since then, the applicant has been in conversations with the planning department on some revisions. The applicant has also made an effort to, as was just mentioned during the call to the public, reach out to the neighborhood adjacent, Heritage Meadows. They held a meeting here. I tried to look at my calendar to find the exact date, but it was a few weeks ago, held right here. The applicant and his team had a chance to meet with the neighborhood and hear their concerns, and they've since submitted a revised set of plans that are intended to address a lot of the conversation that the Planning Commission had with the applicant back on July 16th, as well as the issues brought up by the neighborhood during that subsequent meeting. The proposal is on the northeast corner of Clark and M59, 3 points of public access, a proposed divided access along M59 for which MDOT has jurisdiction, and then 2 driveways on the east side of Clark Road for which the Livingston County Road Commission has jurisdiction. The applicant was required and did submit a traffic impact study for the proposed development. Both road agencies, MDOT and the Road Commission, had an opportunity to review that traffic impact study and accepted its findings and its recommendations. One of the main points of conversation throughout this process was the possibility or the requirement for a new traffic signal at the intersection of Clark and M59. MDOT ultimately has the authority where new traffic signals are required along their state highway, and based on the findings of the traffic impact study, it was determined that a new signal was not warranted at that intersection based both on the existing traffic volumes and the additional traffic volumes proposed or modeled to be generated from this proposed development. It is worth noting here, and we'll touch on it throughout our conversation tonight, that MDOT has already committed to reevaluating the intersection if and when Mug and Bops gets approved and constructed and is in business and is in operation. because they recognize that this is an intersection that is a point of concern for the neighborhood and for the community, and so they are willing to reevaluate it. But for now, they have to honor the findings and the recommendations of the traffic study, and so they will not be requiring this applicant to install the traffic signal. They will be reevaluating it at a later date. So at the Planning Commission's meeting back on July 16th, and throughout a number of conversations with a number of different groups, both before and after that meeting, again, a lot of the topics of conversation have centered around the traffic, and particularly the Clark and 59 intersection, the screening of the use from the Heritage Meadows neighborhood directly north, the lighting from the overall site, and also the gas station canopy in particular, the noise from the potential for noise from the menu board speaker. We had discussions on parking and circulation, on access from the 3 proposed driveway locations. We had discussions about the environmental impacts, all of which are touched in one point or another in Planning Department's review letter of October, what date did we put on it? October 1st of 2015. The Planning Department in that October 1st review letter is recommending that this Planning Commission forward this proposal to the Township Board with a recommendation for approval, so long as the Planning Commission can make some determinations on a number of issues that are within their authority to make a determination on. If the Planning Commission can agree to a number of issues with respect to deviations from a strict application of the landscaping standards, deviations from a strict application of our minimum parking standards, strict application of our lighting standards, and particularly the lighting that's allowed underneath a gas station canopy. If the Planning Commission can come to a determination on all of those, then the recommendation of staff is that this project get forwarded onto the board with a recommendation for approval. The Planning Department obviously went through this plan again in some detail and has submitted a letter, as I mentioned, dated October 1st. I'm happy to go through that letter in any degree of detail that the Planning Commission wishes and answer any questions they have. I've made a point to call out the issues that still require some discussion, both with myself and with the applicant. But at this point, I'd be willing to pause and see if the Planning Commission has any questions for me now, and if they so choose, turn it over to the applicant, because I know they're obviously here with their team, and we're looking to make a presentation of their own.
All right, we'll give it to the applicant, and then we'll come back to us if that's all right. And if you'd like to give us an overview of what's happened since you were last here, and we're probably going to take a walk through the Planning Department's letter of October 1st and make sure we cover all the points.
Sounds good to us.
All right, great.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to be here and to hopefully become part of Hartland Township. Our plan, we believe, meets requirements, and it actually surpasses in many areas the standards that the township expects. And we believe that will become an asset for the community, and that I will tell you that we have been listening to our neighbors, and we've heard them say, we don't want a gas station, and they've made it, with a connotation of emphasis, and I can tell you that we don't either. So we don't perceive ourselves to be a quote-unquote gas station, because I think the negative implication is one of, it's an old-time expectation of a greasy, crummy, rundown facility that, bygone era, right? So we believe that this is an attractive, eye-pleasing facility that's designed as a convenience center, and it's designed for 2015 and the future. In fact, one of the recent conversations I had with your planning department, we realized that we didn't put in, and we would like to add at least 2 spots for electric recharging station. So we spoke just briefly with the planning department about that issue. We've heard them say, we don't want pollution, we don't want odors, we don't want crime, we don't want noise, we don't want light in our backyards. And I can tell you that we don't want pollution, we don't want odors, we don't want noise, and we don't want crime, just like they don't. And as far as pollution goes, We utilize all the state-of-the-art equipment that we have at our disposal. And in fact, I want to give you something for your review or inspection. Yeah, just for your general knowledge. We are at the point where we're installing now real-time access to our tank gauges so that we know. So the best thing we can do is be aware of what's going on if there's ever an issue. Would it be okay if I give this to you?
You know what? We'll share. Pass it down there.
Got it.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
So this is just showing you that we have the ability to find real-time activity at the stores, and one of the most important aspects of that to us has to do with the knowledge of what's going on with the tank gauging systems. And so when we log in, ultimately it'll start to be something that will send an alarm to us to tell us if there's an issue so that we can address it. So whether it's a leak in a fitting, which is the typical area where there's a problem, or whatever it is, that we would be aware of it. So I just wanted you to see that we have this information at our fingertips, and so we're not sitting back saying we're just going to let it go like normal.
Do you guys understand that? So this basically on the right-hand column, it says that 3 minutes ago from when you ran the report, the system called out and gave back its results, and it shows the current volume of product, the most recent delivery, the temperature of the product on the ground, and then it gives us a pass-fail on our tank tightness test. And the headers they didn't print right, but it shows there on there the last time that it actually passed. It's not like it's like, oh my goodness, a year ago it passed, but it's 10 hours and 15 hours ago that it last ran its cycle.
And you can see on the report, when I activated it had just done that. So we just want you to know that we're on top of it. We're not letting it sit back and become a problem. And I think knowledge is important in this respect. As far as odor goes, we don't make donuts at this site, so there's not going to be an odor of donuts floating around in the air. It's not a bakery. As far as noise goes, I have a reading that I also want to share with you that shows we went to the area behind us with a noise meter, or excuse me, a decibel reading meter, and what we did was
Tell you what, you two share, we'll share.
Sorry. So what this is that Duncan Brands, the construction engineer, came out to the site and they took these readings for us. And so what this is if you notice, they went back in the subdivision in the middle of the day on Friday, and they took some meter readings at different spots within the subdivision. And the important thing to notice is that the speaker system, which is the note that's depicted right underneath the header or the map, shows that the sound level at the speaker at 64 feet away from the speaker is at 48 decibels. And the the softest meter reading that we found in the the Heritage Meadows subdivision, I think is it 50 or 48? I can't remember. 48. You'll have to tell me which 48. One that was. 48? So we just want you to know that we're taking it serious and that we're confident that we will not have an issue and that we will address it should something come up. But I want you to know we're looking at it. Yes, Dave?
64 feet from the speaker post is why 64 feet? Is that a magic number from some perspective?
No, that's just the 48 or the 46 decibels. I think is. So it's conversation. So at 64 feet, it's below. It's not a disturbance. So I think our lot line is 270 feet from approximately where we're located, where we're expecting to B. So we've got another 100 feet or 200 feet roughly to go. So it will totally dissipate. And I'm saying that the sound within the subdivision is greater than what we were able to measure or what we expect to measure. There. Did you have a question? No. Okay. As far as crime goes, we can tell you that dark backyards of unused buildings facilitate problems. And we know from experience that clear visibility and customer activity facilitates safety. So we believe that while the impetus for the request of shutting the back door, turning off the lights, trying to make it look like nobody's home in the back will be a negative. It will be a problem. It will invite the opposite of what is expected. So we're confident that a lighted, well-visioned area is important for everybody's safety, and the back of the building is not, the back of the building. It's a front as well. So it's going to look attractive and it's going to be welcoming to everybody. We're here to serve the community. The last thing I think that's important to talk about, the two last things, I guess, we plan to minimize the impact on the existing vegetation that's along our border. I met personally with the two landowners that we abut directly to. I described to them what our plan is and how we're going to approach it. We need to be careful that any construction work that we do doesn't impact that back area, especially in the eastern corner where the heaviest vegetation is. And we can't overburden the root system of those trees or it will kill them. And so our expectation is that by keeping that vegetation as well as putting in basically a forest of trees that are elevated, we're going to be able to block people noise and the line of sight from any light entering into those neighborhood areas. I will go further to say publicly that when I spoke with both of the gentlemen who live there, I explained to them there's two good things. There's a good thing and a bad thing. So evergreens are ideal because they're green all year round. They're a better block than a deciduous tree. So the problem with them is they don't like wet feet. Wet feet will kill them. So we have to make sure that we position them in an area that is slightly elevated and it's not into the wetland area, so that they will be maintained and they'll stay alive. The other thing that I told each of them was that when this project is done and we have all these trees in place and the Christmas tree shape, and we put several rows in to block that line of sight so that they're not seeing lights from the building in front of them. I told them that if you sit in this room of your house and that's where you sit the majority of the time, and you end up with, for whatever reason, there's a spot where it's like, how can that be? They put in a forest and that one spot is open. I said, we'll go to the tree farm and they can pick out the evergreen they want to put and tell them where to place it in their yard to make sure it blocks so that it's not an issue. And I share that with you because I have spoken with them many times, and I specifically went out and met with them, walked through their area, walked through their backyards, swatted mosquitoes. So we were out there for a while. We've traded calls. I hope that they've talked to Mr. Campbell. So I don't know if they did or not. They said they might. So the other item is the wall. So the wall that we're talking about is a decorative wall that is intended to kind of be designed to do two things. One, block the view from the road, as well as give a little bit different feeling to the landscape and the area around the property, so that it feels more like a residential area as opposed to just a strict sterile commercial area. And so these are pictures of the walls that we're expecting to use and asking you for permission to use, because it's not the same material as the building. And this is from Livingston Concrete. They're just around the corner from the offices here. And so this wall will have kind of a stacked stone look, but it is a man-made material. And our goal is to have a combination of stone as well as green, so that it gets mixed in there, and it gives a little bit of a feeling that it's a little bit nicer look. The other thing is that at the north end of the property, Dave, one of the concerns that Mr. Hempel had is that he's worried about people feeling like they can walk through. So if you notice, we have in the other areas, we have like wall at the drives and then a green belt, and wall at the drives and green belt. At the northern section, what we did was we put the wall all the way up to the property line here. And the reason we did that is we want to go ahead and make it feel like a barrier so that nobody comes out the back door and thinks, oh, I'm going to walk back here, and they're going to cruise through somebody's backyard. I will also tell you that Mr. Hempel and his neighbor and I spoke for quite a while. We talked about pros and cons and other things that they'd like. The discussion with them had to do with what do you want to see, how would you like to see that depicted. And at first they were saying, we'd like it mowed and looking really nice and pretty. And then the more we thought about that, we thought, we don't want somebody to come out the back of the store, have a ice cream cone, and think, hey, I'm going to go sit underneath those trees and have a nice park, and then they're going to sit there and look in their back rooms. So they told me they would prefer it to be kind of more natural. So our goal is to disturb as little as possible on the site. The only other thing that I can tell you is that we reward our staff for catching somebody who attempts to buy alcohol or cigarettes if they're underage. We give them a $50 bonus if they catch them. Unfortunately, we're humans and some people make mistakes. And if they do sell, they have to look for a job someplace else. So I want you to know that we take our responsibility serious. We try and encourage everybody else to do the same. And it's been our policy for 15 years or more. So
we do take that responsibility very seriously, and we do not want to control anything to be in the hands of those that are not of age. And that's part of our culture as a company.
And I guess I'd say also is that we do appreciate being here, and we will be participating in the community. We have already participated in the community. I don't know if you know it or not, but so my point is you can go to the places where we have stores and businesses. You go to beautiful downtown Gregory. You go ask people what we do and how we participate. It's just a small little local place, and I think you'll find you'll like what you hear from the people, the majority of them. I'm sure there's somebody who won't be happy, but if you ask them something, they're going to tell you what they think about how we participate in the community. And at least with us, we feel like we're a known quantity, and that you can ask around, and if somebody else comes in, you don't necessarily know what's behind door number 2. You don't know what they're going to be like, but we're confident that you can go ask about us. So, what are the things I'm sorry. Would you like to?
No, you're good.
I'm
your time.
I'm really pretty good. I think that the light, noise, and the appearance of the property is what we worked on. So we are going to ask you if you would allow us to not have this wall be brick like the building, and we've got our samples out in front. And this is the type of thing that we would like to see. The drive entrance, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little a little stone or sconce type thing at the end, so it's just, shines down in the drive. I mean, it's a little detail that we put in there to, make it feel like, oh, I'm coming in someplace, So I can tell you we're trying to make it nice. Right. So this stone down here is the cap, if you will, and see the material itself. So I'd entertain any of your questions.
Well, I think the best thing to do, so we cover it all, is let's go through the planning department's letter of October 1st. If we start with the site plan review, we'll just about hit everything in the special use. We can pick up anything that's left over. So if we all grab that particular packet, and if you look down in the lower right-hand corner, it would be packet page 17 is where we'd start under site plan review. I think we'll get most of the special use questions out of the way that way. So we've already seen the site description. The impact assessment has pretty much been discussed. Again, the MDOT not requiring the traffic signal at this time, but is going to reevaluate. Do you want to touch on the traffic generation at all? And I think we've hit that before, but half of your clients are people that are driving by anyways.
I'd say more than half. It's just going to be people who are there, who are just in the area, and going to say, "Yep, that's what I need." It's people who are either from the community, coming here, going to the school, or they're traveling, going to the expressway. They're coming by. They're going to the grocery store.
Okay.
So we don't perceive that we're going to be a destination. We're geared towards serving the people that are here.
Okay. Questions about that? Comments? Anything? Okay.
I had one about the traffic circulation. I think that was just previous page, wasn't it, or is it later on?
No, that's the later on. You're talking within this site?
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll wait.
Yeah, I think it's later. Dimensional requirements, lot size. Looks like we're doing fine in the area because we have almost a 5-acre site. Our frontage, you're absolutely fine on. 200 feet required. You'll have 439 on the 59 and 486 on Clark Road. Building setbacks, exceeding all of them. Just to note that the rear yard setback required at 40 feet, you're at 329 feet. So substantially removed from the residential property lines. Accessory building setback, dumpsters, looks like it's fine. Building height, we're fine on. Accessory building height, we're fine on. Lot coverage, you can cover 75%, and you're covering 3.3% with your building, so not a lot there. Site requirements, dumpster enclosure. I didn't see a detail in the packet. Is there a detail of the enclosure,
Yeah.
Dave? Did I just miss it?
I thought so.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, 1 point.
Well, then, Dave, my question to you is it proposed to be a completely split-face dumpster enclosure from the note I'm reading?
So there's a note. I think we were looking for some clarification from the applicant. Let me turn it the right way. There's a note, masonry enclosure to match the building facade. But it also shows what appears to me to be
I don't know if
block
that's on
material
the-
larger than.
I think that's unfortunate that I think that's the inside.
Okay.
That's the inside view. So I think that's the block coming up.
The
and
door's open on the dumpsters.
Yeah.
Okay, so the exterior, how do you...
It'll look just like the building.
So you're going to go with the wainscoting of the split face and then the brick on the
Correct.
upper two-thirds, whatever it is?
And then there will be a standard cap on the top of that
Okay.
to prevent.
Could we get that noted on the plan
Absolutely.
so it doesn't become a question?
The one thing I would say is that I think that we would ask you also, would you allow a solid metal if we decide on metal as opposed to wood
Oh, for the door?
for the door?
Dave?
I'd say we'd almost prefer that. They'd hold up better.
That's why we think we would rather go to the metal. That's what we're finding. So I think that as we're going along, we want things that are going to last. So
Color coordinated?
absolutely.
Okay. So if we could get that noted on the plan, how the actual construction of the exterior is finished?
Sure.
Okay.
I have a question on that. Would that be steel or aluminum?
I would say that it would probably be steel, Tom.
Because aluminum is something naturally would never rust, so when it comes to making that would be a consideration.
What happens is they get beat up by those trucks, and so the steel at least at this point, seems like it takes a little more abuse than the softness of the aluminum.
Okay. Off-street parking. Dave, I think we need to, there's a lot of words on that paragraph.
There's a lot of words. I get paid by the word. All right, bear with me. I'm going to have to keep flipping these plans back and forth. Our township zoning ordinance has minimum parking standards for various uses, like pretty much any other zoning ordinance in any other community. What this particular building is it's a collection of uses. It's the fueling component, it's the convenience store component, it's the dine-in restaurant component, and then the drive-through component. All of those components combined, when you add up their minimum parking requirements, create a pretty large minimum parking requirement, and anytime you've got a lot of parking, then you've got a lot of asphalt. There certainly is a case to be made on this particular site that there's going to be some sharing of uses. The customer who's getting their gas will also go to the Dunkin' Donuts counter and get their muffin and their donuts, and the vice versa. The guy who stopped in to get coffee says, I'll get some gas while I'm here too. So what this Planning Commission does have the authority to do is work with the applicant on a strict application of the minimum parking requirements and or allow for deferred parking, all in an effort to minimize superfluous impervious surface. And that's a key component with any site, but I think in particular when you've got one that's adjacent to a residential use, we don't want to put any more pavement on the site than what's necessary. One of the areas that I want to point out is the applicant, in order to meet their minimum parking standards, is proposing 7 spaces up here north of the station along the commercial drive. I would contend that those are not necessarily there because they're necessary, but they're there to meet our minimum requirements. And we could, if the Planning Commission and the applicants think it's a good opportunity, could call these deferred spaces. And if it's determined at a later date that those spaces are necessary, then we would know that they're available. That space is available to put them there. But in general, the applicant is not providing the minimum for the combined uses, even with those 7 spaces. And what the recommendation of staff is that we call these deferred spaces and then allow the applicant to provide the parking elsewhere proposed on the site, even though it doesn't meet a strict application of the minimum parking requirements. And there's some good justification, I feel, on why we could do that, why you as a planning commission could do that.
I would say, Dave, we would like those spots, honestly, and that I think that when we looked at this based on your discussion, we went back and looked at our numbers. And would you bear with me for 1 minute? Let me just go through those calculations with you for 1 second.
I have some questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
That might help.
Yep.
How many employees do you think you'll have there between the 3 uses at a time?
Maximum probably 10.
Okay. So I don't see a lot of extra parking for employees. The other thing, early on you mentioned you wanted to use 2 parking spaces for charging stations.
Yes.
So that means you're potentially giving up 2 parking stalls for 6 hours or 4 hours or a couple hours.
I think that, just so you know, I think that our expectation is that they'll be able to get the charge they're looking for in 30 minutes or less. But
okay.
Go ahead.
It's still, okay,
Yes.
It still ties up the place. And as a person that doesn't like to get stuck behind an empty car sitting at a gas pump, because I'm waiting to get to a pump and they're in buying a hot dog, I would prefer to have as many extra parking spots as they could. And so I can see Dave's point to deferring the spots, but I think between the employees, the charging stations they're talking about, personally, I'd prefer to leave them.
Yeah, I could go either way. I agree with Dave's comments. So more often you can reduce the amount of impervious surface, the better. But if you're saying you need them, then you need them.
I think we
overparked yet. It's still underparked.
It's still underparked if, again, a strict application of adding up all the various minimum parking standards for what is essentially 4 uses from a parking calculation standpoint.
I to support them.
I think we would prefer to keep them. And I guess, Dave, I don't know if you would count one more spot down here in that corner there. We listed as 2. We could probably justify one more right there and not really hurt anything. You see we've got 2 there. You could probably have one more right there in that lower left-hand corner. So that right in there. So that could be the third one of those 2. But our calculation, we show without that one, we would be at 72 spots. And we believe that our interpretation of the parking standards is 73. So I think we're one shy of what our interpretation is. But if you want us to add 4 more, we'll find a spot for them.
My contention is not more parking.
Okay.
Let's go the other way.
Are we fine with the parking as proposed? Okay. So it'll be the way you asked.
Okay.
The barrier-free parking, it looks like you're good on parking lot, driveway, internal road setbacks. Everything looks fine there. Keith, I think we're going to pick your question up in special use, but if you'd like to talk about it right now, it does hit there.
Was there any thought given, I'm talking about the internal driving now. I know that there was some discussion early on about the pattern around the building and the trucks that needed, the path they needed to come in, and the exit onto Clark Road. How much thought was given to the idea of eliminating the southern exit at the egress area onto Clark Road and just leave the northern egress? Because looking at the pattern, I'm not, first of all, I think a truck would end up using the other entrance because it'd be a tight turn to come in from the road from
Well,
59.
Do you want to talk about that now, Keith, or would you like to talk about the other one? We'll talk about it anytime you want.
Let's just talk about it.
Sure.
Okay. Are you familiar? Are you with me? Okay. So I just, because the internal pattern, if you look at the driving pattern and coming out of the drive-through area, I don't see a lot of impact that would happen to the internal traffic if you eliminated it. And I think it would prevent some of the congestion close to the corner. Just a thought.
Maybe I need clarification. Is the suggestion that this would be an entry?
It would be eliminated completely.
I think part of the reason that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they're looking for this entrance is because Clark Road is only a Class A road up to I think the northern edge of Rovey, and so they would only be allowed to bring their fuel trucks in along Clark Road up to that point. Okay. And so if nothing else, they need that entry point. Not to mention, there's certainly something to be said for aligning, a driveway with Rovey Drive to capture any, crossover traffic from the folks that are, coming from Meyer and want to stop in here too. But that's my understanding is their primary motivation for having that driveway at that location was to get their fuel trucks in via Clark Road. And then I believe the intent would be, their underground tanks are right here, and then they would go out via the M59 drive.
Okay.
I'm sure you figured out a tanker can get in and make that turn. Okay. All right, so we're on packet page number 21 at the top, I suppose, on loading. Do you know where that's going to be?
That would be right in that top section.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see. I got to just turn back on.
Kind of a hatched space
Right
near the stacking for the
in
drive-thru.
there. So right out beside behind the back door, right next to the
It's
drive-through.
Okay. Access management and non-residential driveway standards. Dave?
So the township in our zoning ordinance has standards regarding the width and the spacing of non-commercial driveways, non-residential, aka commercial driveways. How far apart they can be relative to one another, how far apart they can be relative to a intersection. But then ultimately the road agencies have jurisdiction. So while the township is trying to achieve good access management practices by having adequate spacing along our commercial driveways, because anytime you get commercial driveways too close together along a high-speed road such as M59, that creates the potential for traffic conflicts. But this proposed driveway along M59 is the desire of the MDOT. And in particular, if you notice, it straddles their property line. So the intent would be that this would eventually be a shared driveway for whatever may develop on this adjacent vacant commercial property, and that user would share this driveway with the proposed Mug and Bob's. With respect to the Clark Road driveways, again, looking to align it with Roby Drive. I know we've had a lot of discussions about having the secondary point of access. Long story short, and let me say the Road Commission has accepted these driveway locations. So long story short, while there are some slight deficiencies from our driveway spacing standards, these are the commercial driveway locations that MDOT and the Road Commission either demanded or has accepted.
Any additional comments about the Southern Clark Road being a right turn only? I'm reading your comment here.
We did have a discussion at the public hearing on the July 16th about the possibility of not allowing left turns outbound from this driveway. The rationale would be that, as all of us in Township Hall and the folks in the neighborhood can contest, the traffic along Clark Road can queue back a certain distance, and if left turns were only allowed at the northerly driveway, then you would eliminate the potential for any vehicles, outbound left turning vehicles, getting blocked in the queue by folks at the southbound approach of Clark. I know the applicant, at least on the 16th, was going to look at that and was going to consider the option of a island, that a pork chop that we call it, to eliminate the outbound lefts, and along with some signage. That's not what they're showing now, so I would be interested in some discussion on that topic.
The only detriment I can see to that, Dave, was then you're pushing all the traffic north, and you've got everyone that wants to enter or exit onto Clark Road has to go north first and shine headlights into the neighborhood. Whereas if you're going to let them come out right there at Roby, then I think that sort of thing will sort itself out during the peak times. People are going to say, "Oh, I'm going to go north and get behind the line."
I would agree. Most customers.
Non-peak times, it'll be open.
Yeah, I would agree. Most customers are going to learn pretty quickly to avoid going out this way to get back out to 59. Then you're going to go right back out the same way they came in off the highway.
Well, and I would agree with Jeff's comments. I think the person who wants to try making a left out onto Clark at 5 o'clock can sit there and wait. If they travel north, they can get in line on Clark Road or take 59 direct, because I think you're right. If they're coming out on 59, they're not going to get on Clark Road. Why would you do that? That just doesn't even make any sense.
Well,
so
it depends. It just depends. Like he says, that's mostly out of convenience if people are going there. So they're going to see an exit, they're going to take it, whatever's closest. They might not want to drive around the gas station, the gas pumps to get out to the other exit. So
yeah,
they'll take the most convenient one.
Right. And at 5 o'clock, it'll be directly to 59. But I guess my comment would be, I would think that we could, I agreed with the pork chop, 2 months ago, but I'm just wondering if it's really necessary. I think common sense of the drivers will sort that out.
I agree, and they don't seem to be working in the township anyway. CVS, buyers.
That one over by CVS.
That one works.
That tends to work. It's a pretty good size.
It's not all. It is better, but it's still not all.
So why don't we? Are we okay with not putting one in?
Yeah, so I'm okay with that for the same reason that I think people will abuse it. And even if you can't see that 30, if you're a regular customer, you're going to know how to deal with that. But if you're new, you're going to end up going around it, swinging very wide.
Right.
So I like the idea.
Okay. It'll also allow more room for a truck to work in and out of there, a delivery vehicle.
One concern that we had about putting the pork chop in. We weren't so much adamant about not making a left turn, but by putting the curb island in there, you have that occasional truck that wants to get in there. You know how they all swing a little wide when they're trying to make those curves. So we wanted to avoid that.
All right.
So if I can, Larry.
Yeah, absolutely.
On that exact point, So, when a truck does swing wide, which I'm sure they never intentionally do that, it just happens, we have an entrance off Hartland Road that goes into Meyer. And there's a ditch. It probably travels in 5 feet over the curb, and it's probably this deep. So is there a way that you can, I hate to think that you would put up a barrier there, but is there a good technique to try to cause the trucks to make a wide enough swing so they won't, because they're going to, I would guess they'd have a landscape issue there also.
I think what it is the back tires of the trailer running over the curb on what would be the passenger side of the truck. MDOT does a lot of where they actually pave up the curb.
I would say if you would allow us to have a slightly wider drive there, Tom, we could do that and work on trying to figure out how to prevent it, because as you said, Larry, we don't want that trailing end of their tires to go over the sidewalk and hit the wall. So I think if it was slightly wider there, it would allow us, because I think we're narrowed it down to just what is that, 30 feet, Pat?
I think it's 24. We originally were assuming that was just going to be a right out and right in, so we didn't have a left turn lane in there. So we're going to go with the left turn lane, maybe do it similar to the north line, where we have a right, left, or an in, out, and a left.
Does that mean a resubmittal to the county?
They've, not to my knowledge, gotten any county right-of-way permits on this. The county would be waiting for the township to approve it from a site plan standpoint. That being said, I don't know if you're in conversations with the county, if they've already given any sort of preliminary blessing of this layout.
Yeah, we've submitted, we've got some comments back, and basically the locations and alignments are okay. We've got a few issues to deal with on the paint striping and signage and stuff.
I would say that if outbound left turns are going to be allowed at this driveway, it does make sense to then have a dedicated left lane similar to this one, which would then address two issues. One is the outbound lefts are not blocking the outbound rights. It also widens the driveway out a little bit to allow for that wider turn in for the inbound trucks.
That's what I would think. What do you guys think?
I agree. I still wondering how they're going to make those trucks turn.
Well, then the other issue was, I think, like you were right, the way to eliminate the landscape issue with the tires going into the landscaping is to make that curb a little bit wider, so that when they do cut the turn short, they're on a hard surface, not a soft surface.
Correct.
So, that's a possibility.
Wide mountable curb.
Yeah.
So is the question to add a lane or a mountable curb? Is that where we're at right now?
Well, I think a mountable curb will still roll off, but I think it's
going to need to be wide.
Lane's going to help. I think they're saying they're going to widen it, right? So that it looks like a north.
Similar to the north?
So they'll cut down on the possibility of damaging landscaping first, and then they can also widen the curb.
And as long as you don't get gas deliveries during the peak donut time in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that driveway's probably not going to have anybody in it.
Right. Yeah.
So you can use the whole driveway at that point.
So I like the added lane.
Okay.
I like it wider, like the north side.
Okay. So are you okay with that?
That's fine.
Make it similar to the north?
I'm guessing they're going to have to look at a little bit of realignment relative to Roby to ensure that they have the proper lane alignment.
Okay. Put in the motion here. Anything else on access management? Landscaping and screening. Sue, do you want to hit these one at a time or in total?
Maybe kind of one at a time.
All right, so why don't we talk about the Greenbelt landscape? Comments?
So my comment, I'm just trying to understand the landscape greenbelt, which has also got that knee wall.
Yes.
And the grading plan.
Okay.
Because when I look at the grading plan, it looks like from the inside curb, from the drive, it just slopes right on down the grade. And that wall, where you've shown it, is kind of down the slope.
Well, it depending on which wall and where you're talking about, Sue, I understand what you're talking about. And and when Pat and I have talked about that, we think that the two things. If you remember, along Clark, we used to have that swale in there to try and collect that water coming from the west. So we've eliminated that, so that should be more flat through there. So that one will not be an issue.
Right.
The spot where we'll have the most issue to contend with that you're mentioning is along the southern curve, and we think that there's enough room to blend that just a little bit higher so that it doesn't fall off hard
Okay.
at that spot, because we want the wall up high enough to block the view so that we're doing what you're asking us. We're not going to come down 2 feet and put it in there and then we've lost the grade, because that's our goal. And so we will figure that out. I don't know exactly, but Pat said, look, we're behind the pump station and along that front ditch, and he's saying there is space to feather it so that it is more level at the top.
Okay, so right now as it's submitted, the wall and the evergreen hedge aren't providing the screening that's
They are.
required. It's not submitted with the grading when you overlay it. The hedge and that wall are down 3 to 6 feet below the grade up at the pumps.
Well, I don't think it's near as bad as you're talking, because that's a whole, I believe it's 15 feet across there. And so those grade changes that are on that side, if you go back to the...
Yeah, if you just look at the grading plan, what I tried to do was make them the same scale drawing and kind of overlaid where the grades were. And when I put those together, it looked like those walls and your landscape hedge were down the hill at least 3 to 6 feet.
And that's why I'm saying to you that when I talked with Pat about those very issues, he is telling me that along that southern portion, because that's the spot where it's going to be affected, that we have the ability to plateau slightly and feather it into the right-of-way right there.
Okay.
So it won't be down.
I guess we need that to be illustrated to make sure that we can achieve that.
Understood.
So that's just a comment on that. On the
There's a possibility, I think, too, to rework the shape of that wall right
yeah.
there, right? To
All
put
sort
it
of.
up higher on the grade.
Certainly.
Right.
I think that's what, along Clark Road, I think we're okay, because we added that underground pipe.
Absolutely.
Between the canopy and M59 there, I think they're probably push that wall closer to the first line there.
Right.
And just carry the grade out a little bit before we go into our slope.
Right.
And that'll give us, I think, the screen you're looking for.
Sure.
Not to meander the wall. But
Sure.
So are we going to look for a correction on the plan in that?
Yeah, I think we need it, because right now, as it's shown, it's just not providing
what we need. Dave's writing feverishly. Are you getting it down?
I am.
All right. Anything else on Greenbelt landscaping? Anyone? How about? Go ahead.
Okay, and then on the size of the plant material that you've listed on your plant list, we have requirements. If I understand correctly, on your latest version, if you kind of zoom in on that, right there, the shade trees, I think you've got a 2-inch caliper.
I don't know that they changed from what they were.
And
is that what they were, 2 or?
They need to be 3 inches, the shade trees, per our
3 inches?
ordinance.
Okay.
The screening evergreens need to be at least 30 inches.
Right. I agree. What do they say on there? For that, so when they're planted, they're at 30 at least, right?
And
Correct?
I think you've got 2-foot minimum. So we just need all those sizes to be compared with our ordinance and make
So
sure.
like the hornbeam that says 2, that should say 3?
That hornbeam, where you're using your hornbeam, is a
That's at the
foundation,
building.
so you're
That's
okay
at the
there.
building. So it's the one on top
The
of the
maples.
red maple. Okay.
And then the evergreens?
And then the evergreens, how it says 2-foot minimum, when they're used as a screen, they need to be at least 30 inches.
I think they say, what, 2 to 3 feet?
Yeah, and she's saying they're going to be a minimum 30 inches.
30 inches.
Yep.
So
just try to get all those standards set.
You up with us, Dave?
Yes.
Got it all? Okay. Anybody else on Greenbelt landscaping? If not, let's move on to foundation landscaping.
On the foundation landscaping, again, we have a section in our ordinance that talk about the width of it and then also the frequency of the trees and the shrubs. And right now, you haven't met the quantities of the shrubs needed.
So when we examined the drawing that you had sent us,
Sure.
apparently we didn't understand how that's calculated, because we thought that on the basis of the calculation, it didn't include the all four sides of the building.
That's
It was a front
exactly
and
right. Just 3 sides, or we need...
Is it 3 sides? Okay, so we thought it was a side and a front, so that's what we calculated on. So we need 60 more feet. You want 2 sides and a front?
But I'm mostly looking at how you've got it dispersed, all your landscape around. You have ample. That's not the problem of how much you have. It's just that your areas, when you look at them, they're mostly full of stone mulch and don't have the shrub and ground cover coverage that our ordinance requires.
Okay.
Our ordinance also doesn't recommend that you use any stone mulch. It talks about mulch, and it likes to do more of a natural bark. And right now, if I understand the way your graphics are, what you're proposing is stone.
It's more of a river stone. It's a larger, it's the
Sure.
size of a softball.
Like a
It's
cobble.
not pea stone. Yeah, right.
Like a cobble. There's very few shrubs. If you guys look at that, it's just going to mostly be cobble with just a few shrubs, and that's not what our ordinance asks for.
So have they just made a miscalculation on the number of shrubs that they need? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm
Because those sizes are when those shrubs are full grown,
Yeah.
by the way, not when they go in.
But you want to see them spread out through the...
Yeah, throughout. So,
Site.
right, like it would say for every 30 feet, our ordinance will say how many, like 6 or 8 shrubs should be within every 30 feet. And
I think that our count then is off because of that footage calculation.
Okay.
So I would say that we would have to add the same percentages that are required for another 60 feet, because I think we believed it was a side and a front, not
Sure.
a front and 2 sides.
Okay.
So that extra 60 feet should add back, and I'll be happy to confirm that with
Okay.
Dave, and we will put those in.
Sue, would there be any consideration to adding another variety, maybe of an evergreen or something, so there was something there during the winter versus this, what are you using, spireas, I think?
Spireas. Right, we try to do a mix, just like you're saying.
So there's something there in this,
Is it so the shrubs we're talking about,
Got the
the Hicks yew,
now the Hicks shoes are out on the green belt. Around the building, you have spireas or, however you say that, potillas?
and those are both deciduous as you're bringing up. So in the wintertime, as you're saying, it's going to
There's
have no
nothing
leaves.
there.
There's not much there.
what do you think would be a good green to add? What
Well,
would be a
I mean-
good green? I mean, we
You can use a juniper that's more salt tolerant if you're going to be, because you're going to be salting those walks, especially, people in through the winter. That handles it. The yews are another evergreen, but they tend to not do well in the salt. So you can look at some of the varieties of the juniper. It's
Okay.
the most salt tolerant. Just to, like you say, it's a good point to get a mix. So
you'd like to have green as well as,
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Just so there's something there all year.
Yeah.
What's the balance on the other side? What do we have in terms of landscaping directly on the next corner? I mean, wouldn't we want to have balance? Would that balance, with the landscaping on this side balance with what we have on the west side of Clark Road there? Is there anything?
There's nothing there.
Nothing there.
Yeah.
It's still open. Okay.
Yep.
I know that the one corner.
Which section are you talking about, Joe?
It's okay.
Okay.
It's not going to matter.
We just usually look for a balance of the two. Michigan has a long period of the year where all the leaves are gone. So if we get some evergreens in there, at least there's something there around to look at during 5 months of the year.
I got you.
Right on the corner.
There is some
There
rampa
is,
landscaping
but-
right on the corner. It's a combination. It's probably the exact same thing that we just told them to do.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Right.
That would make it more sense about what we're looking for.
Okay. Any comments on that?
Well, the other question was about the ground cover material, and we're expecting that to be a bark mulch, and they have stone there.
Right, so
Yeah.
is that what you guys...
I prefer the bark mulch because the stone tends to collect, garbage, especially stone the size that you're talking about. You can't get in and rake garbage out or pick garbage out very easily, so mulch can, looks a little bit more presentable. Yeah.
So we blow it out. Backpack blowers and blow out. So to me, mulch looks really good like the first month. You know what I mean? It's like it's got to be continuously regenerated. The stone has some staying power. But, it's our opinion.
Well, when you add the shrubs, there won't be as many stones showing, right? Or when you add the...
Or as much. It wouldn't bother us that there's no mulch there because it's hidden.
What do you want to do, Tom?
I like mulch.
Sue, you're the land.
I prefer mulch too. I understand the merits of what you're saying. It's just right now.
Mulch it is.
All right.
Mulch
Mulch is easy.
absolutely.
All right. Thanks
Absolutely.
a lot. Anything else on this particular item? Foundation planning? So let's move on to, are you good with that, Sue? Mm-hmm. All right. We're at the back of page 22. Parking lot landscaping meets the requirements? No. So we need to talk about these islands that are missing on the corners of the building.
Correct, particularly the northeast and southeast corner.
The two south and the one northeast.
Yeah. There's an indication of one here, but I don't believe that's intended to be a curbed landscaped island. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong.
It's intended to be like just a little bit of a raised spot, Dave. It wasn't intended to be a full berm. And you're saying you'd like that to be a full berm?
Well, we're saying all four corners need to be
Covered
similar to the, and I guess I understand what you're saying about the snow plowing and all, but everybody else in town seems to be able to do it, to be able to get their snow out. How are you different?
I can tell you that the number of times that I have been out there at 2:30 in the morning plowing snow,
Mm-hmm.
that it's
Straight runs are nice.
it is very so when I look to design and build, you want it to be functional as well as aesthetically pleasing. So I do appreciate what you're saying, and I do understand, and I think I would ask that on that corner where Dave's cursor is right now, I believe that we could put in some facilities there that will do what you're saying. And I guess I would look for some direction from you and ask you, are we able to make them, do you want them full 20-foot length? Are you happy with a mushroom that has a tree in the center with curbing around it and the mulch in the middle and shrubs around, so it's a softer corner?
Yeah. So,
or how would you like us to approach those, Sue or Dave?
I'll take first stab. So we would be looking for some interior landscaping in order to meet our standards. This is a good opportunity for it. Yes, we would be looking for a raised landscaped, corner island. It can be and really should be shorter than the parking spaces adjacent to it. 3 feet's typical on that. In addition to breaking up
3 feet shorter, Dave?
Yes.
You said 3. So okay.
In addition to breaking up the the parking lot and providing some green space within the parking lot, I also think there's something to be said for it. It would enhance the circulation around your site and perhaps decrease the potential for someone coming around this corner a little too fast and clipping one of your parked vehicles.
Understood.
So I can understand I've driven a snowplow myself and I can understand the concern there, but I think we can make it work with the landscape islands.
So 3 feet less curbed, tree, shrubbery, plantings, and mulch on all four corners.
So
we're doing this one over here on the southwest.
The southwest one?
That's the northwest.
Is the way it is?
Yeah, there's the southwest right there. What are you doing there then?
I think we might be losing a parking spot if we put one there. But I think there's also, as folks come out of the drive-through, that could again, enhance circulation.
Yeah, but they could clip it too.
Yeah, that corner looks fine to me.
I'm happy with that corner.
Yeah.
Anybody
I
else?
think you're going to force traffic out into the path of regular traffic after they're coming out of the drive-through.
Or they can take this and head a little bit into that island, slide the parking
Well,
over
we're talking
a
about
bit.
the south.
Yeah, but I mean, you can gain some room.
Oh, shove it
Yeah,
over.
shove it over a little.
And just have a narrow
Yeah.
strip like kind of.
Yeah, right.
Duplicate the
Yeah.
north,
Yeah.
duplicate the northwest
You know,
on the southwest and shove the
Yeah.
parking
Yeah.
into the island over on the southeast.
Right.
We would counter that the southwest corner has a peninsula currently as it comes off the drive-through, which would signify that there's a commitment to landscaping. I would say that I agree with you wholeheartedly on the southeast and northeast corner, and the northwest has the peninsula marked there in the drive-through. That's what we would propose. Does that make sense? Or do you understand what I've said?
Yeah.
Not that you agree with it. but-
Yeah, and I agree. I think that southwest corner is fine the way it is.
I do too.
Yeah.
All right, you okay with that? So we'll change the southeast and northeast parking lot corners there to include a curbed landscape island with trees, shrubbery, and mulch.
Sue, would you like those two to match each other? Is that your preference? On those two corners?
That
You'd
would-
like them to
that would
match
be
each other so
ideal.
they
That would
feel
be ideal.
balanced? Okay.
And what you've got on the northwest corner currently, you've shown your tree. Not, we prefer a tree. And then there should be at least 50% of that island should have
Covered
some
with shrub?
shrubbery.
Perfect.
And then the ones up above that on the north that kind of cradle either side of that loading area, again, look at the square footage of those islands and make sure those are full.
Well, and again, I think that when we redo that calculation, and
Yeah.
we'll go through that with
Okay.
Dave, we'll fill it up. It'll be full. Because before, we had so much on there, you couldn't.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you remember what that was like. It was, and so when I reviewed your
The plan.
note, I obviously didn't quite catch everything you were telling me.
So I don't want to miss something here. Sue, did you talk about the islands out by that loading space?
Yeah,
Dave,
on
could you
either
scroll
side.
down just a little bit? Right
Yep.
here, these two, whatever shape those are.
Right.
What are we doing there?
So I suggested that they calculate the square footage.
Right.
And then look at our ordinance, because our ordinance says at least 50% should be full of shrubs, and then the balance needs to be a combination of, I think it was ground cover, perennials, and mulch. Right
Okay.
now, they're mostly completely stone with 3 shrubs in them.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure those weren't overlooked, because, we want you to come back.
Understood.
Okay. Anything else on parking lot landscaping?
I think adding those shrubs will be very
Right.
easy to do, and converting the
Sure.
stone to mulch will be very easy to do.
Item D, perimeter landscaping. Planning Commission determination required. Dave?
So the applicant is proposing is asking the Planning Commission to accept preservation of a lot of the existing vegetation within this area along the east, and then within this area to the north. You can see there's a dashed line meant to indicate where they intend to leave the existing vegetation undisturbed. So the applicant would be asking that they be given credit for that in addition to the plantings being provided to satisfy their parking lot perimeter landscaping requirements, and that is something that's permitted so long as the Planning Commission agrees with it. Staff thought there was an opportunity to maybe enhance the north area of the parking lot, and so whether that's additional trees or some relocation or a combination of both, just to, again, provide as much buffering as we can from this end of the site heading back into the residential district.
Comment?
Yeah, I agree with both those comments. I do want to give you credit because there is a lot of natural vegetation that's going to be left there, but I agree, Dave, that there is some opportunity right in that stretch. So sprinkle some things in there and just to kind of close the gap maybe a little bit between 2 sets of plantings, and I think that would be good.
Tom?
Agreed, yep. Sprinkle would be good.
Agreed? Yep.
Good?
area right here.
You familiar where she's talking about?
Yes, between the entrance to the drive-through and the exit, right
Right
along
here.
the whole
Right
northern
here.
section across that, yes.
Right
Kind of
here.
a bold spot.
It's just another buffer, open, natural buffer, residential. It's another layer of providing some screening. Any other questions on the perimeter landscaping? Are you willing to accept that as shown then?
Is there?
We're going to get into the screening here on the north.
Okay, yeah, from adjacent properties.
Right. That's coming.
Right now, we're talking about screening the parking lot.
Yeah.
Are you good with that? Okay, it would appear so with that minor modification. E, the detention, retention landscaping. Since we have underground, we have nothing. So now we are up to screening of the residential district, between the residential. Could you explain again what you're doing? And there's some question on berm height, and is the berm the full length? What is going on exactly?
I think that first off, I'd say that we'll gladly take direction from the planning department as to how we fit that area in. We don't want to destroy what's there, and if you encroach on it too much, it does cause problems. And so this area right in here has a large amount of existing vegetation, and I don't know if we can see it on the picture here. So when I walked that area with the two landowners, we talked about different areas along in here. There's 2 or 3 or 4 trees right in the back of Mr. Hempel's property that he said, I don't want these to be gone. And so I think that we're going to have the berm. It may not be continuous, but it will kind of come around a couple of those trees in that area because they'll be left. But our expectation is that we'll be putting in between 50 and 75 trees across here, and it just depends on what happens over here. The feeling that we have is that if we come up with a 3-foot elevation across that back and the majority of the area there, it will, with 8, and we spoke to Dave also, when we order trees, it'll be 8 to 10 foot trees, and it will be 2 varieties of spruce so that we ensure that we don't have like what's happening with was it the blue
spruce.
So anyways, it's going to require some determination by the installer. But we're committed to making sure that this is a forest across here. And if we have to come out a little bit, it may not be that perfect line in roads like that, but it's going to be a forest that it's our goal to block the property from seeing things. So it's not just the 2 roads. We think that the 3 roads will give us that because, as you pointed out along the front with the changing grades, Sue, we want to have a top surface area that's pretty wide, so that certainly that one main road will be as tall as it can be, and then you've got to be spaced out a little bit, and they may be off that edge. I don't know how they'll fit in, but I don't know if that makes sense to you. I know it's a little bit
abstract,
but I can tell you that we will build the forest there and block it.
How are we going to?
So if we don't get it right the first time, we will get it right the second.
So I think, if I can jump in, I think there's certainly something to be said for preserving some of the vegetation that's back there, which is mature and big and serving a purpose for screening and buffering. I don't think the answer is to clear all that out in order to create the 3 rows that he's showing, nor do I think is that necessarily Mr. Leekander's intent. I know he and I had a chance to talk about this a week or so ago. I think what could be a solution to this is for Mr. Leekander to commit to a certain quantity of trees, whether that number is, I think he mentioned a range of 50-something to 70-something. Commit to a certain quantity, and commit to a certain percentage of that quantity being 8 foot, a certain percentage of that being 10, and if we want to go up to 12. And then give some flexibility to have some field discretion once these trees actually go in. So that rather than saying that tree must go there because that's what's shown on the site plan, even if it means taking down a quality mature tree that's already there, as long as he's meeting the requirements for the quantities and the general location and the heights of the trees that are being proposed, then there could be some like I say, some field decisions once they actually go in.
So will we add a note to the plan to that?
Well, I think you'd want to add a note saying what is the minimum number of trees that have to be there, what is the type of species, and I think a percentage of how many should be 8, how many should be 10, and if we want to go up to 12, how many of those there should be.
And he did say the 8 and the 10, but I think the ordinance calls 8, 10, 12s, or am I just getting out of PDs? We've been doing a lot of 8, 10, 12s.
I believe it's 8, 10, 12.
Right. So we'll probably need to see some 12s in there.
I'll look at it, whatever it says. I was believing it was 8s, period. And at your discretion, it can be 10s. I didn't believe it was 12s.
Okay.
But I will tell you that when I first went to speak to both of the landowners, as we walked back through there, it became apparent that we couldn't do exactly this.
Right.
Because
I don't want you
of
to do that
very reason. And so in my conversation with them and with your planning department, it became apparent that we should figure out how to buffer it in a fashion, and I think that Mr. Campbell's suggesting that we commit to X number of trees so that we can put them in some other spots if they're required. And again, I said, when it's all said and done, when the forest is there, and if those two people have some other problem, I did tell them that we'll go to the tree store and we'll get another tree, and they can decide where it goes in their yard.
Now, keep in mind the context of the conversation. The special land use requirement for a fueling station is for a 6-foot masonry wall where a fueling station is adjacent to a residential district. But it also goes on to say that if the Planning Commission wishes to deviate from that with landscaping, with berms, or with some combination of a wall or some combination of all three, then that's the Planning Commission's discretion. In conversations back in July, and I know when the applicant had a conversation with folks in the neighborhood, there seemed to be something of a consensus that clearing out a bunch of the existing vegetation in order to put up a 6-foot wall was not what anyone was looking for. And so, again, what the applicant is offering is an alternative to the 6-foot masonry wall, which is a large number of trees, and we should probably put a limit on what that number is, or a minimum on what that number is, atop of a berm, but situated such that they preserve as much of the existing quality vegetation that's there.
So then, does that mean once you determine which trees will stay, then you determine where your berm will go? Because otherwise, what limit is the berm at?
Well, the berm is going to be very natural looking and flowing, I believe, is what's going to happen. Because you can't take an existing tree and throw 3 feet of dirt up the trunk, as we all know, because it won't be there very long. So I think it's going to be a berm that's got some of this going on.
Correct.
Well, since we're talking about the berm, I'm questioning the need for the berm at all. It seems to me like the adjacent property owners are pretty much at the same grade level as your property. Is that correct?
It's close.
Very close, and they slope kind of east.
Correct.
Down to the wetlands. And wouldn't the effect of a berm be to open up between the ground and the first set of branches on a coniferous tree so that you can see right from the backyard into your property? And wouldn't it be more screened if it was at a grade level?
I think that is a good point, and I would say that maybe what we should do is commit to the number of trees, talk about what that is going to look like, and at some point take and plant a couple in there and actually see what it's going to look like. And we already know how many we're going to have, but you're absolutely right. The goal is to make sure we're blocking the lights, and at the low level, that is a problem.
Right, and we've got a wall around the parking lot anyway, right, that we think we're going to be screening most of the headlights with.
Well, when you say wall, are you referring to the addition of trees through here?
Well, and where's this wall?
Clark Road wall.
No.
Just that's a decorative.
That's on the perimeter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where we're at, we are adding screening to the north side of the park.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to think of how, what the sight line is going to be.
Well, I have a question for Sue. Sue, does a conifer tree generally, if they're left alone, do the branches that grow to the ground stay there and they're okay, or do they die for some reason, die back?
Typically, when you let them be, and you're not weed whipping, whatever, you can get them right down to the ground, and they should stay at the base of the ground.
Okay.
It's when people start to mow and trim and limb them up, but typically they should go down to the ground. So you're not going to be looking underneath
Yeah.
the branches.
That was my concern. That's
Right.
what it seemed to me like.
So,
happened.
so any height that we can add, But again, with the grading, we understand if you can get a very naturalistic berm, that would help with it. But it's got to be, like you say, it's just kind of in the field, figured out how to make it work.
Well, I don't like the idea of figuring it out in the field.
I know.
Because it becomes very tough to add anything later. I understand you're committed to it, but it becomes tough for us to force you to do it because it's not on a site plan anymore.
Well, and we don't want to kill anything that's
Well,
there either.
but my
And that's
point
the
is-
other point. And your point.
Hold on, just let me finish here. My point is that I think a survey can be taken out there, and you can pinpoint the trees that you want to leave, and you can design easily a naturally looking berm. Happens all the time. So I think it can happen. I think it can be on the site plan. It doesn't have to be strict, and I understand that in the field you're going to make changes on the fly, but at least there'll be a general direction noted on the plan that we can kind of get back to.
So you're saying, let's go ahead and note the trees, and let's put the berm in then,
You can
as opposed
you can
to.
even show the trees on the plan. I mean, we've done that before on other site plans where they're leaving natural vegetation and show it on the plans. That way they know this tree stays, all these trees stay.
I agree.
Any comments?
Yeah, I agree too. Yeah, that way,
great idea.
you know what your final product is going to be in that case. The trees are going to be marked and exactly close to it. Exactly.
And then, can I assume that the landscape plan would then show this same quantity of trees or something close to it, but working them around the existing trees that are shown on a survey?
Yeah, because you'll end up with more. He's supplying 57, and there are already trees out there. So the screening will be more dense than what he's drawing.
Unless the quantity would be eliminated based on how far you pull that edge of trees over. So if you kept the spacing just as they are, Sue, if you think that's a logical spacing, and we're going to come in 15 feet to it, then that 15 feet times that many trees could be dropped, I would guess. Why would you plant them too close together? Because they're going to grow into each other.
Well, remember, that's after they're full grown, or whatever that is. That is not at planting. They're not going to look that close when they go in.
So our ordinance kind of talks about that triangular spacing, and they're typically about 12 feet apart, so that they start to grow together, but they don't get too close. So that could be worked out. That could be shown.
Well, and the taller trees are going to have a bigger girth to begin
Exactly
with
so.
also.
You've got the canopy, and so you're going to have to identify, as you're suggesting, where the trees are, work out kind of the grading with the grades to see how that can work. So we can see the berming and the trees together on a plan, because it's too hard, as you're saying, later to try to apply. We need something on a plan.
Well, right now, what this plan indicates is clearing out whatever that width times the back of the property is and putting 57 trees in.
Right.
That's what this plan says to do with a 3-foot berm.
Right.
It says take everything
Nobody
out.
wants to do that.
And no one wants to do it. It's
Well, I don't
not
think
working.
he wants to.
No.
I don't think the homeowners want it, and I don't think we want it.
Right. So, long story short, you'll get a survey, you'll show kind of where these trees are, get enough understanding of the grades, where these trees are at the grade, and then show how the berm would work with the supplemental trees. And then we'll know that we've got an effective screen.
Is this quantity that they're showing, once it gets rearranged, would you say that that's still the quantity or something pretty close to it that we're going to want to see?
I wouldn't commit to
I
the
wouldn't
number.
either.
With the bigger
Because
trees, you may make
It may
them
be
out there.
less.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it might be less.
Might be off the hook for some of the trees. We just have to see that we get the screen that we need.
Yeah, I'm not thinking that off the hook is what'll happen. I think it'll be,
No.
you know what I mean? It'll be nice when it's done though, because
Right,
you know
that's
the
what we
homeowners
want.
are going to identify which ones they want to keep.
Sure.
Right.
And we'll go from there. So
Sounds good.
I think that's the best way to do it, and so that way nobody's surprised by
Sounds
what takes place.
And then another opportunity there is we've had some other adjacent properties that needed significant screening, and I think the developers were able to come to an agreement with the homeowners to put some plantings on their property.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's what I talked with each of them about, that exact same thing. I think that they were happy that we were going to leave trees and that we were committed to having that, and that at the end of the day, even after the best guesses, we said, you know, this is where you're sitting all the time and it's bugging you, that's where we're going to put it.
Okay.
So we'll identify the trees and identify how the berm can fit with the topography and the tree.
Yeah, you're going to need to show the elevation, the grade change.
Well, but the difference of the root system, so we don't kill the tree.
Right.
I mean,
No, you have to take that into But that's part of the plan.
Well,
part of the
I
plan is
don't-
determining that.
I liked where Jeff was going a little bit, because then I'm not going to kill that tree when we get too close to it. And I guess I'd like to ask
Well,
you
Howard,
to have
what
some.
you said different than what I said.
No berm, is that what you're referring to?
Oh, you just need to say it better, I guess.
So my biggest fear is that, you know, we plan this out and we think we're going to get this just like we're talking, and for whatever reason, you know, we screw up the root system. Somebody drives over it, whatever, and the tree dies, and the person's going to be unhappy. Your comment, you know, I think if you would allow us to have some flexibility, which does exactly that, and it may be that a bigger tree going in, and I have no clue on what I'm talking about cost on this, but I'm just saying that without putting a berm in every spot, there's an advantage. I think in the end on the east side, there's an advantage to keeping the trees in place, that they won't die by not filling. But I do think we're going to have to berm some of the area, because it does fall off a little bit. So I guess I don't know how to.
Well, then I'm going to speak more clearly.
Yeah,
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
agree
Go
with
ahead.
what
Go ahead,
he
Mike.
said with what you said. I think you need the flexibility. The goal is the screening of
Correct.
your property to the residential.
Correct.
It can be done in a combination of berm, no berm, plantings. You have to come up with an effective screen.
Understood.
That would be the way I would put it. It will not be a continuous berm, would be my guess.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it will
All right.
be a forest that blocks the.
It's the end result, what we're looking for.
Exactly.
Right.
I think we agree on that.
Okay.
Can I take a stab at summarizing that?
Well, it is 8:30.
Yes, it is. I think I can go quick. So identify the existing vegetation to be preserved via a tree survey, a partial tree survey. Show the berm's grading, a natural free-flowing berm meant to avoid the existing trees to be preserved. And then show the location, the quantity, the species, and the height of the new trees proposed.
I would say even to show the surveyed trees on the plan.
Yes.
I think you did.
Yeah.
You said that, okay.
You did.
You guys good with that? Did you get it all? You got it.
Pat's got it.
All right, Pat.
He's good identifying it.
All right. Pat, there's another comment there then on the landscaping. We need to get all of the compliance standards, you know, irrigation, all that type of thing on the plan where it's required. It's on the planning director's note packet, page 23, under just general landscape plan comments. It'd be the second to last point. Compliance with all applicable standards contained in the zoning ordinance, irrigation, planning methods need to be referenced on the landscape plan.
Just a note.
Okay. A note is sufficient.
I think
Yeah.
that's what we typically see.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions?
And that will be a combination of at least 2 species of trees. Also,
Yeah.
just want to make sure you're.
We've been
spruce
encouraging
and
that.
white spruce and
Yeah.
Norway and white. Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure we agreed on that idea.
Yeah. Are we done with landscaping? Any other comments on landscaping? I knew that would take a few minutes.
Yeah.
Sidewalks, pathways?
So sidewalk is proposed along Clark Road, which would essentially extend the existing sidewalk that dead ends at the residential development to the north and carrying that all the way down to M59. And then the applicant is proposing a pathway along M59 that would, at its western terminus, align with the, bear with me, let me go back to this version of the site plan. The M59 frontage pathway would align with the existing crosswalk apron at the northeast corner of Clark and M59. What we would want, though, is not a straight shot all the way across the property. If we can, we'd like to certainly align it on the west end with the existing sidewalk apron, but then have it, kind of gently curve up and bring it within 1 foot inside of the MDOT right-of-way, which is where MDOT would want it. But what it would also do is it would align with the existing pathway that currently dead ends at the west end of the KFC property, such that this gap that we have in between, when the day comes that this commercial property gets developed, then it's a straight shot of 8-foot pathway all the way across.
Okay.
So basically at the eastern end of the applicant sidewalk, have it line up with KFC's 1 foot inside of the highway right-of-way.
So, David, that's a concrete sidewalk?
No.
No.
That's asphalt.
That's how I read it, though. So that's
They're showing a concrete sidewalk.
It's not the north side asphalt?
It is.
Okay.
And KFC is as well.
That's what I thought was unique, because I can zoom way in here.
No, it's
It says that.
So yeah, even though you're putting in a concrete parking lot, you'll need to bring the asphalt truck out.
Quick question on our point on that. We have that sidewalk there to the south a little bit, because if you look at the grading plan, we have a cross culvert in there, but we try to bring that up to the right of way. The grade doesn't work. So our plan is to bring it across our approach, and then once we get past the wetland, it would angle up to 1 foot inside the property line, and then meet the KFC further down the way. If you look at sheet 4, it might show you a little better.
Stops right there.
We can't fill the wetland.
Yeah, the problem is we've already got the permit for the wetland, and that will actually be increasing the acreage of wetland we have to fill.
So your wetland fill, which is indicated by this cross-hatching.
Just where the drive is. That's it. So we can't. We don't extend through the wetland. And what Pat's talking about is there's 2 culverts that are in there that are the 59 water and the south side of the 59, the water coming under the road feed in right there, both called 3 culverts.
Yeah, it would put that sidewalk right in the ditch, basically, in that area.
Where's your property line at in relation to that?
It is just at that 257.12. That's our property line.
I can't really see. You can't put it.
Okay, so the property line is right right there.
No, the eastern property line. Yeah, the north-south.
It cuts in the
Right
pork
there.
chop. It splits the pork
Right
chop.
there.
Oh. Yeah.
That's the technical term.
Oh.
Oh, okay. So we're saying that the next development would have to make that connection.
Well, we think it should come right up right here.
Right.
So it'd be straight across, then right up here, and then over. Because otherwise, you're into the wetland, and that poses some additional problems.
Yeah. I can see that on the grading plan.
Well, it would be consistent with the sidewalk pathway separation from M59 on the west side of Clark Road, and there would be opportunity to get an alignment when we get this gap filled on this property. I have had some conversations with MDOT, and this was something that they were looking for too. So I guess if the planning commission's comfortable with it, we could leave the pathway as proposed, subject to MDOT review.
That's fine. You all right? Okay.
And I did understand you do want asphalt out on asphalt sidewalk.
It's consistent with what we've required for developments like KFC.
Everything on the north side of 59
Is asphalt.
is asphalt, and we're, I guess on the south side.
I guess
The
it's
south side is where we do the concrete.
whatever they call it.
Well, what's on the west side of Clark Road? Is it asphalt or concrete?
It's
Asphalt.
different.
That'll be concrete.
That'll be concrete.
The west side of
On the
Clark. Oh,
west
no.
side of Clark?
There.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, the east side of Clark Road.
That's going to be a 5-foot sidewalk, consistent with what's already there in front of the residential
concrete.
development.
And that's concrete.
The asphalt on all along M59 on the north side,
I don't know where that got started,
so,
but that's been that way forever.
well, it's always been kind of like a
Bike path.
bike path slash
It's meant
access.
multimodal.
So the sidewalk on the west side of Clark Road that goes north and south, that will be what material?
Concrete.
On the
Concrete.
It'll be concrete, so then when it meets M59, it'll meet an asphalt
That's right.
sidewalk.
Which is just the way it's been for as long as I've been around.
Yeah, I just wanted to...
KFC did
I just see how
asphalt.
that-
When the township did Heritage Park, we did asphalt.
Walden Woods is asphalt.
Yeah.
It's all asphalt. Ramco's asphalt.
Yes.
They're all asphalt. Okay.
I have a question
Yep.
about the sidewalk. Is it possible just to have a connection from the sidewalk, maybe from the Clark Road sidewalk to your store?
Sure.
We do try to kind of have everything walkable, and if it's out
Sure,
right-
we'd like that.
Okay.
That'd be fine.
Could look at-
Where would you like that? Where you want us to just pick a spot and bring it in where it's where we think it's going to
We
be?
got to look at the
easier?
landscape,
Or do you
like
wanna
wherever
choose
it works.
Yeah, wherever
Wherever
it works and makes most safe
Sure,
for someone
no.
to come into the store,
Sure.
that's better than walking down the drive.
Yeah, no, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, well, there are actually kids that walk along that road. I witnessed it with my own eyes the other day, so that would probably bring business to you.
Build a sidewalk and somebody will
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on sidewalks? Okay, we're at the bottom of the page, which flips to the next lighting.
I'm serious.
Intensity.
They will come.
Dave?
The Planning Commission would have to make a determination similar to the determination made with Speedway that the canopy lighting be allowed to fall within that 25 to 35-foot candle window that the Planning Commission, at least when we were looking at Speedway, felt was most appropriate. The lighting elsewhere on the sites, the parking lot lighting for the rest of the site falls well within our parameters, and the lighting level falls off well before the adjacent residential properties. So it would be a question of whether the illumination levels under the canopy itself could exceed what's currently in our zoning ordinance, which is something the Planning Commission does have discretion on.
Well, we did it for one. Why would we do it, not do it for another?
Exactly.
Right.
I think we felt we did a good survey and a good study.
We did a whole lot of field research, and the determination was that 25 to 35-foot candle range was what was bright enough that you could safely look through your wallet under a gas station canopy, but not so bright that it creates a safety or a aesthetic hazard. And this falls within that range at an average of 32-foot candles.
Everybody good? Okay. Fixture height, looks like we're okay on. Fixture pole and colors need to be noted. Using dark bronze, is that what I'm reading here? Okay. Won't be Dunkin' Donuts orange.
Oh.
All right.
It'll come factory powder coated. We don't want
Yeah.
to change that.
Yeah. All right. Fixture type, meets requirements, no. Dave, can you help us out here for a quick second?
I flipped to a separate section.
2/3 on page 24.
Yeah, it looks like he's providing us what we would typically need, which is the color information, the full cutoff note. Those would need to be added to the actual illumination plan.
Okay. So can we do that, Pat? Get it on the drawings themselves?
We'll share.
Yeah,
We're fine. We're sharing. We're sharing. That's all right.
Yeah.
So,
You do have more, Todd.
what are you showing us?
they're lost.
Oh, yeah. These are flush models. They look like what BP has. Okay. So we'll get that on the plans. Pat's going to take this and just cut and
What
paste.
color are you going with?
All right, so are you going with the dark bronze on all the light fixtures?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll need to make sure we get that on there. And Dave wants to make sure everything's full cutoff and all those types of notes.
Which is what these are.
Yeah, and canopy lights are flush mounted. Any questions on the fixtures, the types? We did, back on landscaping, talk about a lot of things, but we did not identify, are you okay with this wall versus a wall that is of the same material as the building? Is that okay with you?
I like it.
Sure. So it's a consensus of the planning commission that the proposed wall material is acceptable. That's great.
Okay.
We're at the bottom of the page there, packet page 24, water supply and water disposal. Nothing really to say there, so we can get on over to packet page 25. I think we already talked about the dumpster enclosures, screening wall, we just mentioned there, so now we're on architectural building materials. Can you give us a rundown of the materials you're using? I see you've brought your samples.
So the bottom portion will be the split face block, and then it will be a full brick face. This is the colored. Yeah, it's not a veneer. It'll be a full brick. And this is the standing seam steel on the roof. A combination of different colors, and the green that we're proposing in the band that's above the door. So if you look, say, right above the door where it says Market Box on the right-hand side.
Right here?
Right.
This is green?
And it's green.
Okay. Is that the only green then? And the back's probably got the same thing on it?
Correct.
It's identified as a canopy on the drawing.
It is. It's an area to cover those.
It's curved, I believe.
That particular one is going to be square coming out, and it curves out. And yes.
Is that the same color scheme you've used on the other mug and pops?
This green is different now, but everything else is very similar to the other colors. So this green is just adding a little bit of color where the entry awning, if you will, is located. It's just a little structure there.
Do you know if that's clay brick or masonry brick?
It is man-made, but
Well, yeah.
It says,
it's a porous. I would guess it's clay. Would be a guess.
Well, clay's required, that's why I'm asking.
I'm guessing. Okay, well, I'm guessing it's what you're expecting to see. That's what I believe.
Oh, yeah?
Is that what it says
You
on
know?
the drawing?
Yeah.
I can see, but it's.
We were intending for it to be real brick, not, I mean, what you would think in your mind as brick, not as a
Yeah.
fake painted stuff.
Oh, no. Well, they make brick that's actually cement with dye in it.
It's not cement.
So is it real clay?
It's real brick.
It's not a. This is. I'm gonna plan this plan.
Okay, we'll just
cement.
need Dave to verify
Yeah.
that. We'll need the specs on it to make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Any comments on materials, colors? It looks very nice.
And that's just the color of the. It's
Yeah.
green and pure.
It's a lot of roof on the building. I mean, there's a lot of metal roof on that building. I did not take the time to run to the Howell store. Is that a shingled or a metal roof?
Metal.
It is a metal roof. Similar colors, combinations?
Exact same color.
Okay.
So, if you look at
Now, that drawing has the percentages on it?
You have the total percentage versus the side, per side. What is the gas canopy top? We have the brick columns, and then we have it going to a round metal pole, and then, of course, we have this metal roof structure. What colors is that on the plan?
It's dependent on the brand of the fuel.
Okay.
You're talking about the facade, the fascia band on the canopy?
Mm-hmm. We don't know what brand of fuel that's going to be there at this moment, Larry.
Okay, well, we should talk about the dissonant color thing. We typically haven't seen bright blue or bright green canopies. I think if you look at you can have the color band in that, but I don't know if we've seen them all green or all blue. Because those are probably the two colors you're thinking of. Or if it's shell, I guess it could be orange or yellow.
You know, I would say that the colors, the base color would be the white underneath of the fascia itself, and then depending on the brand, they have a band that you're talking about that they identify their canopy with. Yeah. Now, if it was a Sunoco, it would have a swoosh like a.
Well, then that gets into signage. How are we going to deal with this, Dave?
Well, signage is approved under a separate permit, including canopy signage. The canopy material itself, though, outside of the signage that's put atop it, if it's... you get into something of a gray area when we start talking about a swooshing logo across the canopy, and whether that's considered a sign or whether that's considered a color to, that's consistent with the rest of the building. My job when a sign permit application comes in will be to determine whether or not, if they're doing some sort of a swooshing logo, I may bring this right back to the Planning Commission for a determination on that. If we can come to an agreement of a base color, regardless of who the corporate branding is at a later date, that might eliminate that possibility. I think if we get into a corporate branding color that we determine to be dissonant, it may be problematic for myself to approve it and for the applicant to justify it. So I think we do want to be careful about how we skin that canopy. I guess I'd be asking the applicant, is there an opportunity to, regardless of who the fuel provider is, to limit their branding opportunities to just a sign on the canopy that is otherwise a neutral color?
I would say two things, Dave. In our experience, obviously the brand image of the fuel is an identifier for the motoring public, and the brands push as hard as they can for their image, and at the end of the day, you as the township have the final say, and you can say we can live with this and we can't live with this, and typically, as long as it's your demand, meaning the authority that allows us to be there, they will say, okay, this is what we'll accept then. So
I think what Todd's saying, it may be better or easier when we propose our sign package for you to say yay or nay then, so that we can go to the brand and say, hey, this
is
was
what-
shot down, rather than get something approved today that doesn't make anyone happy. It's easier for us to say to them, this is not approved.
Well, you're going to need to put a color on it. The safe thing to be would be for you to just call out one of those beige tones and be done with it, and then when you determine the brand, then bring it in to Dave. That would be the way I would probably
Would
recommend
you
you do it.
prefer a brown as opposed to a white, Larry? Because I think most of them have a white background.
I don't know. I know
I'm asking you.
Speedway went cream colored on theirs. They
Yeah, they have
didn't
a
go
very
red.
nice logo, I
I
think.
like the dark color.
You like the darker color?
I don't. I'm fine with the dark color. It just needs to be a color. That's
But we know that it probably will not be that bronze.
Their color.
yeah.
They're probably, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't take that bronze to Sunoco and they're going to say, okay. They're going to come to us and say, it's got to be blue with a swoosh, and then you're going to say,
No.
I can live with partial blue, but I probably will not be able to get bronze approved either.
Yeah, I think if you were to take a look at what Speedway even got, Speedway has stripes and all that kind of stuff. And what Speedway's going to end up with is a Speedway sign on the canopy.
And what will
There are
the
many
color be?
communities that do that. We're
Yeah,
not the only
well, and
one.
that's why
That's
that's
what
why
he
I
was
said
saying.
to you is that at the end of the day, you as the community have the final say. So I'm saying to you that we will be able to satisfy you, and you will help us by saying this is what we'll accept.
Okay, well then we
Okay,
need
and so I
something on the
don't
plan.
perceive it to be
Yeah.
a problem, honestly.
So
Okay.
I think what I'm hearing is for the time being, we need to agree on a color, and I thought I heard cream.
The darker one.
Pardon.
What's the color of the columns?
It's on the brick up
brick
halfway.
column.
They're usually they're painted either a gray or a bronze.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to match the building. You just pick one of those metal finishes, colors you got right there.
Would you prefer that matches the roof then? Is that what you're thinking? So that it's a similar, or would you like a contrasting tone?
I don't know, I just don't want it blue, red, or green.
I think the
Okay.
darker it is, the less of an architectural element it is, the better your building is.
So he's saying, would you like the canopy fascia to be the same color as the roof?
The roof is that darker color.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would look really nice.
Okay.
And then when they come in with their sign package, I can administratively review and approve it.
Sure.
If they don't like my answer, then this planning commission is effectively the appeal board for any sign permit application that I have to deny.
What your argument is to whoever the fuel supplier is, that gives them a great contrast with whatever their brand.
Well, and that's why we're saying to you that as the board, you have the final say on it, and you can say, we won't accept that in our ordinance, and this is what we want. And, probably the biggest thing that they'll want is, as Larry said, is their sign. That will be the most important aspect, their medallion or whatever. And if that's all it is, we should be able to match that. I mean, with the sign ordinance.
So Pat, just get on the plans that the gas canopy is going to be in that color to
Bronze
match
color.
the roof, the bronze color, whatever it is. So it's all identified in what color it is. Any question on the architecture? You guys okay? They're over a little on the metal because of the roof and everything, but I think aesthetically it's a pretty attractive looking building.
And you understand why that's, okay.
Oh, yeah. Signs, as Dave just said, they're approved under a special
Separate.
application. You may have signs on your plan, but they're not part of what's being approved today. So, any questions, comments, anybody on either the DPW, the engineer, or the fire authority, MDOT, or Livingston County Road comments? The letters we have? Looks like there's a few things here and there they want done.
Yeah, the fire marshal's going to make you move some fire hydrants.
Okay, if not, let's look at page 27, because I think we're getting close, and then we'll run up to anything else that you have. Before any formal action made, Planning Commission would need to come to a consensus on the following matters. Let's just make sure we did those. Site plan and special land use is consistent with the use criteria, section 665A through F. If you go to your packet and go to page 10, packet page 10, you'll see at the bottom A through F. Kind of discussed these last time around. We all comfortable with those?
You guys have probably discussed this at the public hearing. What are your hours of operation?
24.
And that's on the drive-through as well? 24-hour drive-through?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, or good with the A through F? Okay. Mayor, let me real quickly here, 2, screening buffering requirements. Section 4586 for a fueling station adjacent to a residential district. We've just talked about that, and the new plan will be coming. Parking provided is sufficient. We talked about that. The waiver of strict application of the architectural standards. We just reviewed that and are going to accept the deviations. Outdoor sales component is permitted so long as it is contained within 3. Oh, we didn't talk about this.
It was in the special use standards. I wanted to get flip back to that.
Which we're going to come back to. So we probably need to do that right now. And that is located on page, I did highlight that.
25 at the top.
25 at the top.
I think so.
On the outdoor.
I think it's up in the.
Page 25, the outdoor sales screening.
Well,
It's
I
in
think
the
more
special
particular,
use.
it's in the special use standards, which is on page 6 of my letter, which is page 14 of the packet.
Okay, there you go. Yep.
Number 7. They would be allowed to have outdoor sales so long as it's contained within a designated area. What they're showing is, on their floor plan and on their elevations, an outdoor sales area on either side of their front vestibule, the M59 side, and then one more on the entrance on the north side of the building.
Dave, will you let me add one item is that this area right here, so what happens is that right now is where we're expecting to have an area for bottles so that the consumer, when they come in, they can use their bottle machine to get rid of the bottles and cans. It may be that that's on this side as opposed to this side. So I just want you to know that the final design, I don't want to surprise you, but I wanted you to know what that was so that when they walk in,
We'd like them not to bring dirty returnables into the store. So when you enter the back vestibule, you either be on the right or left-hand side to a bottle room, depending on which back room we use to service that space.
So you'll just.
The opposite of that would be the covered walled outdoor sales fair.
That's fine.
You'd be surprised by that. That's
So if you flip the bottle return room, you'd flip that utility room then too?
It's very possible that I just want you to know that we're finalizing all that. So.
Okay, so
It's internal anyway.
stay tuned, huh?
Well, it's the same thing, but it's the mirror image of the.
Right. Dave, did you need any more questions or conversations on that? The outdoor sales storage, probably, or not storage, outdoor sales area is pretty common.
You did add a wall, though,
stations
I think.
have that.
They're there.
You were resistant
Someone
at
added a
first.
wall.
Yeah, well, it was there last time. It's still there.
And we recognize that they're there. Yes.
So, and that would be all that's where that stuff goes. So there won't be stuff out at the pumps and those kinds of things.
Not unless you change your ordinance.
All right, pallets and mulch.
Not unless you
not
change
that.
your ordinance.
All right, thank you. Dave, did we need to cover anything else on that then, that point?
No, you would just be acknowledging that they are providing outdoor sales area. You would be making a determination that's permitted so long as it's being contained within those designated areas.
All righty. So item 6, then, the applicant will provide the township with documentation of a sound professional which demonstrates compliance with the standards of 4.283, where it requires that no sound from speakers shall be audible to property boundaries, at the property boundaries. So.
They've provided some information on that already. I want to take a closer look at this, and I may be following up with them with some additional information. If it's a determination of Planning Commission that is something that would help us confirm that they are meeting the criteria, that they're not projecting sound beyond their property lines, and particularly the north property line.
Okay. Then they have brought up an item of 2 electric charging stations. Do you know where those might be located?
I think they'd be in the northeast corner would make the most sense.
So you'll want to put those probably on the plan when you get to that.
And I only bring them up because I don't want you to be.
Yeah.
And I think that our desire is to serve the people going down the road, and we think that there's more and more electric vehicles.
We think they're relevant.
Okay.
And it's at a point where people would like having that. It's a nice service.
Okay. They can grab a coffee while they're charging.
So speaking of the sound level exceeding the boundaries, was there a question on the direction and position of that thinker box, or whatever we're calling it.
Well, the concern was that if it was facing straight back, it would somehow reach the residential area behind there. And so we have brought it around to the curve in the drive-through, so it's kind of in a northwesterly fashion. So it's not facing straight back any longer.
And that's on that, the second.
It is. Yes.
There.
Yes, it is.
It's not on that plan, but it's right, I think it's right there. Oops. It's
Sorry,
on
let
now.
me-
You're all right.
Now I got to flip it again, but
It's on this little one.
so they did change the orientation so that it faces northwest as opposed to due north, which it was on the original submittal. The criteria for the special land use criteria is devices for the transmission of voices shall be so directed or muffled as to prevent sound from being audible beyond the boundaries of the site. So what my task would be, if the Planning Commission gives me that authority, it would be to review this sound information they've already provided and determine that if it satisfies that criteria. If it doesn't, I'll be looking for more information from them.
Yeah, that's not the way I read it. The way I read that part of the ordinance is if you can hear that speaker box from across the street, then it's not meeting the ordinance.
Correct, and I think what they're trying to demonstrate with this sound data is that it will not be.
Well, that's by plan, right? That's on paper, they're saying that it won't.
Yes.
What opportunity or mechanism do we have once it gets built and it's fully operational, and you can hear it?
Well, it would still be a requirement, and so we would have an opportunity to, once they're up, if and when they're up and running, be out there with a noise meter. If it's exceeding, if we go along to the property lines and find it to be exceeding what's permissible, then they would be obligated to make some adjustments.
You're making me think that, Jeff, we should probably put in 2 stubs for electric, because if it's at that 45 and
It shoots at the property.
it shoots at the Rovey Drive area and you can hear it when you're walking on the sidewalk, we're going to have to position it back north again, because probably north it won't be heard at 270
Well, I don't think
feet.
you get much complaint if you're hearing it from Roby Drive.
So
So your concern is the north, then?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
That's fine.
Right,
Okay.
and there are
Perfect.
residences across the street also
Yeah.
north, so the more west you can direct it, I think the safer you're going to be.
Okay, we're with you. So you're not just saying, look, if it's just the sidewalk that's hearing it, that's not your problem.
Strict adherence to the ordinance says that. So, I mean,
Understood.
yeah. But like I say, I don't think you get much complaint there.
I understand.
You know, and part of when I look at this, as I say, I want to look at this in more detail, but I notice the ambient noise levels are taken at, noon, 12:30. You know, high traffic volumes on M59 at that point, you know, tire noise, engine noise, everything else. We may want to look at this at what it might sound like at 2 in the morning, when M59 is a little bit more calm.
Okay.
So that's what I'd be looking for in terms of a noise analysis.
And I guess that's why I was wondering what the hours of operation are, because, I mean, how much business do you expect to get during 11 to 5 in the morning in your drive-through?
There's actually quite a bit.
Pretty substantial.
In this location, you're going to expect that with the traffic levels on?
There was more than one person in the subdivision when we spoke to him that said, oftentimes I leave at 3 in the morning. It'd be nice to be able to pull in and get what I need and go.
Right. I guess that's the trade-off, right? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, what do you wish to do with this evening? You can send them back to correct everything that we've talked about, or you have an opportunity to deny it. You can move it forward with conditions. What are your pleasure? What's your pleasure tonight?
We had a lot of items, I think, on our list. Site plan review. I think it's clear with the special use, but I don't think we can separate them at this point, right?
We don't want to.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of work to have Dave clean up before it goes to the township board, in my opinion.
Okay. Where are you guys with it?
I guess it's up to Dave.
Well, no,
There's a lot to fix on the site.
Yeah, there is.
There really is. There's so much.
A lot of little things.
Just little things, and everything can be hurdled. There's not that. It's just that between the grading, between the parking lot, wider drives, all those different, it really is going to be a different plan we got to look at.
Okay.
We are looking at, from a township board's perspective, I know that there's just very, very early preliminary discussion about looking at a light at Clark Road, how that might work. But as Dave has indicated, MDOT does not move lights.
Right.
It'd make more sense if that light further down actually got moved down to Clark Road. It would save I think it would serve a dual purpose, because that turnaround, that first turnaround gets backed up anyway. That would allow for both the eastbound and the westbound turnaround to be clearer. So I know some of the board members are interested in looking at that. I'm just pointing that out as some of the concerns over traffic that we might have. We're going to look at that very carefully from a board perspective.
I'm comfortable with the proposal. I'm comfortable with what they're doing. I'm comfortable with what we talked about. But I would agree there's a lot left on this plan that needs to be worked through in terms of making sure we get the berming right, all the things that we talked about this evening. So
I'm most concerned about the traffic.
So I'm not sure there's anything else they can do with the traffic.
Traffic is what it is. I think MDOT's willing to say that, they're going to look at it when it goes in. Because the township can pay for the light, but MDOT's not going to let you put it up.
Actually more of a step than they've taken in the past.
Yeah, I've never seen him write that comment. But in the residents of Heritage Meadows and anybody else that travels Clark Road, the township's been on a light at Clark Road for years. We've had numerous meetings with MDOT over the years over that intersection. Not even with these people in the picture, before they even came up, we were trying to deal with that corner. So the fact is the people down in Brighton are hearing it again, and I think that's probably why they're writing in their comments, we're going to review it when they move in, if they get approved.
I think if you guys are in discussion with them, I think a simple answer there is some clear signage to let people know that they should use that first turn lane and not wait until they have 3 lanes coming at them that are clear of traffic. If they're making a right turn only, use that first lane. And then if you're not going to the highway, you're not going to Hartland Road, then move over when you have time. But in my experience, most people just wait until they have 1 or 2 clear lanes to turn into, and that's what causes the backup on Clark Road.
Yeah.
So I use that every day, and it's my concern because I go eastbound on M59. So if there's got to be a gap, I've got to be able to cross all 3 lanes to get to the turnaround. And then once you get to the turnaround, we all know you can't see because of the way those 2 lanes coming at you are lined up. So I'm that other guy, that doesn't turn right. I am. So
What you should do is you should crowd the inside and let people go, or crowd the middle and let people go inside.
Yeah. Oh, I do. Yeah, I don't hug the right. Yeah, I do. I do take that. I do.
Or take
All right. Well, I think where we are right now, because we can't solve that problem, is what do you want to do with this? Do you want to send them back to touch it up from the conversations this evening to get a cleaner proposal to the board? Do you wish to deny it? Do you wish to recommend approval?
So I think it's a good project for sure. I like it. We would just have to, can we identify all the items that we talked about tonight and get those written down in a sense that they would be cleared up later for Dave to handle?
My concern with doing that? My concern with doing that is I think that there's enough of a concern with the screening on the northern element that we've got personal investment that beyond just saying just go do it. I think I'd like to see what it is that we're going to do, because I would like to personally myself know that I've said I'm comfortable with that. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, there's enough other things. A lot of times we'll cover it with a motion that address all the issues in a review letter, but there's quite a few. And then there is the berm issue on the north end, so I think I'd be more comfortable sending it back. Give them a little more time.
What kind of turnaround, what are you expecting, like 2 weeks, 4 weeks?
Well, as fast as they can turn it around, they would
How
just...
quick can you turn that around?
I think that I'm most concerned about the actual construction of the berm. I don't think that I think we can give you a plan, but I don't think it's going to be the final. I think it's going to require more finesse than we expect. I would like to think there's some other way to wrestle with that aspect of it. We'll certainly identify all of the trees on there. I think that we probably can have it back to you. Our goal would be to get back to you in a couple of weeks, Joe. I mean,
that was the question.
I think, but I don't think that, your timelines require submission, time to look at. So I'd have to defer to Dave as to when we could actually be back to you in a meeting setting. So I don't know what the guidelines are for this particular revision that we're doing. I don't think you folks would like us to show up here that night and not have a chance to see it either. I don't think that would be beneficial for you. So I'll discuss with Dave more clearly what the chairman is asking for on that berm, because that's my biggest concern.
I think
Berm,
in the
no
end,
berm.
I agreed with what he was
Yeah.
saying. You've just got to effectively come up with a method to provide the screening, whether it incorporates a full berm, a partial berm, a rolling berm, a size of trees, whatever you need to do.
I think-
It's your job to put that screen together.
So that you're able to feel comfortable with knowing as you expressed it. I understand what you're saying. I can't disagree with you. I think that's a
Well,
reasonable request.
you understand the intent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we'll be giving you enough flexibility that it may not be as difficult as you think. If you just get out there, walk it, inventory the existing vegetation, and then just sit down and draw something. I think you'll find it probably isn't quite as difficult as you think.
I'm hoping that that's the case, and it'll give us also a chance to look at tree sizes and what we think might be available, because I think the biggest area that I'm concerned about is that northeast section, and to me, that's the area where there's the largest concentration of the trees that the homeowner would like to keep. But at the same token, since it's primarily deciduous trees and that area right there is wet, I worry about what we have to do to berm that. And so that's my biggest concern, being right there and how we accommodate it. So it's hard because of what we're dealing with, but we'll figure it out. Yeah,
It doesn't
okay.
have to be a
Yeah,
continuous
we'll figure it
berm.
out.
All right,
It-
well,
it may be.
anybody else have anything else they want to add to him for him this evening? The plan has come a long way. I appreciate all the work you've done on it. I think you're real close to wrapping it up.
We'll get there.
Okay.
I commend you for thinking forward on the charging stations. I think it's
We're excited.
Agreed, yeah.
We don't know what tomorrow holds, but we want to be there to.
right. Well, I think just the fact you're thinking forward enough to have that put in there is great.
Yeah, I think that'll pay you dividends, because you're right near the gym proving grounds. Right?
When everybody's heading to Lansing or whatever they're doing, they'll be.
A lot of them live around here.
Good call.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yep.
I guess the only direction that I would ask is that last question I asked, what is the timeline for us to resubmit so that you're allowed to
Review it.
review it?
Well,
So it's kind of a resubmission. What would you like, Dave?
I mean, I don't necessarily want to look at a calendar right now and say, if you get me something by this date, then we'll look at this date for the next Planning Commission meeting. I will tell you that most of what we've got here are items that don't have to be re-reviewed necessarily by the fire marshal and our township engineer and folks who, I don't have to worry about folks that I don't necessarily have control over their schedules. So
It's more documentation of the items that I handed you, as well as the...
It's that. It's making some changes on the landscape plan. It's cleaning up a number of things with lighting and driveway orientation, things like that. But I think they're things that mostly get reviewed by just myself and my staff, rather than having to send them to other folks in other buildings and tell them to hurry up and get them back. So long story short, I think we can have something of an expedited turnover.
Okay. We'll work diligently on our end. We'll address each of the issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. All right, let's move to item 8B, Site Plan 537, KFC Office Building, and they're here. I think what we'll do is ask you to have a seat. We'll let Dave introduce the project, and then let you guys tell us what you want to do from your point of view. So let's turn it over to Dave.
So thanks again. The applicant is here to propose a second phase to the site plan that got approved earlier this year for the KFC restaurant. And what that second phase would be his business office building. So the applicant is Mr. Flewelling, who owns the KFC franchise. He also owns, at least 4 other KFC franchises in the area, and this would effectively be his business office. Mr. Flewelling is a Hartland resident, and this would be his home office. This is in addition to his site plan that Mr. Flewelling envisioned throughout the review and approval process for the KFC restaurant, but I think his dream of having an office building on the same site may have been accelerated when he got. So your old office in Waterford got sold, or?
No, I rented it out a lot quicker than we thought we would.
He got a tenant whose rent he couldn't refuse, apparently. So this has kind of accelerated his plan to build this office building. The office use is a use that is permitted on a general commercial zone piece of property, which this is. We're obviously talking about the same neighborhood that we've been talking about all night, which is the north side of M59, a little ways further east on Clark Road, or a little ways further east from Clark Road. 3,700 square foot office building with 6-7 parking spaces, and that's going to be a point of discussion tonight, is the opportunity for some deferred parking, given that as we already talked about, we want to minimize some of the impacts on the residential neighborhood behind and minimize the amount of impervious surface. We do feel that this is an opportunity, too, to further enhance the screening from the residential neighborhood to the commercial uses along M59, KFC, and everything else. We're talking about a brick building with some additional landscaping enhancements behind it, and collectively those would serve to further screen the lights and the traffic from M59 from the neighborhood. As has been discussed at this planning commission, Mr. Flewelling, as he was building the KFC restaurant and working with his contractor, he did make some field deviations to allow for this office building. And in making those field deviations, he did deviate from the site plan that got approved. Typically, that would be an issue that we'd have to address with enforcement. But we also understood Mr. Flewelling's plan to move forward with this phase of the project. So, in a certain sense, he got a little bit of an injunction from an enforcement matter until we saw how this phase of the project worked out. As you can see, proposing the office building with the parking on the south side. This was by design to keep the parking on the west side of the building or on the north side of the building, again, to minimize impacts on the residential properties to the north. He is proposing an overhead door on the west side of the building. My understanding is the back of the building would be where the owner would keep some of his equipment and some of his tools, things like that. So he does want to have drive-up access to that, one of the things I want to talk about is the width of this proposed access lane. The applicant is proposing a typical 24-foot wide commercial drive. The Planning Commission does have the discretion, if they so choose, to narrow that. Again, minimize impervious surface and minimize the view of the people who live next door. The applicant has submitted a landscape plan to provide a berm and screening to those residential properties, and we'll have an opportunity to talk about that. Procedurally, this is considered a site plan. He is not amending the special land use component of the restaurant. So the KFC with a drive-through was a special land use and had to go to the township board for approval of that special land use. This being just the office building, that doesn't otherwise alter the drive-through component. It is not amending the special land use. Therefore, it is a site plan that can be approved by the Planning Commission without another trip to the Township Board. The recommendation of staff in our letter dated October 1st, 2015, is conditional site plan approval, subject to a number of issues being addressed on a revised submittal that we would review administratively, so long as the Planning Commission is comfortable with some certain decisions that are within their authority to make, particularly the deferred parking. Again, we're seeking deferred parking for this office building, and some discretionary decisions regarding the screening and buffering, particularly along the north property line. With that, I'll take a pause and see if the Planning Commission has any questions in particular. Otherwise, obviously, the applicant's here to likely make a presentation of their own.
And we're going to let him just do that. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I'm Bill Beckett, W2 Development, working with Glenn Llewellyn here. Dave was correct. During the construction of this project, Glenn rented his office a little quicker than he expected. He did think Phase 2 would come along eventually, but certainly not this quick. So in an effort to address the changes that were made during construction to accommodate this, we are trying to expedite the plans and the site plan review for this proposed office. The office is proposed to be 2,700 square feet, or I'm sorry, 3,700 square feet, accessed off the rear of the existing KFC, so no new curb cuts with MDOT. Really a very small use office for Glenn for holding meetings with their managers, crew training, that type of thing. It's be fairly light use office. It's also the way we designed the building. We made a one-story building. We've given it a pitched roof. It'll have asphalt shingles on it. It's really a great buffer to further buffer the KFC from the neighbors. Typical office hours here would be daily. Very rarely would there be evening office use. So the KFC closes at 11 o'clock. This office is probably going to be open normal business hours, 9 to 5, maybe occasional later than that. We are requesting deviation of the parking. There's 11 cars required. We're proposing 7 cars. And certainly there's ample room for development in the future if the need arose. Dave mentioned a couple of things with regards to the access to the rear warehouse area. We do have a overhead door for Glenn's truck, snowplow equipment, that type of thing. So it'll be fairly seasonal use, but there could be lawn maintenance and that type of thing. With regards to the access drive for that, we would agree that could be reduced in width from 24 feet to 12 feet. There was some discussion about maybe creating a T turnaround type at the end. I don't think that would be really necessary. The driveway in front of the overhead door is about 20 feet wide at that point. And I think Glenn's a pretty good driver. He can go forward and backwards. and probably not need the T turnaround. In terms of landscaping, we showed a berm all the way across in an effort to kind of comply with the spirit of the ordinance. We did show the berm all the way across the rear property line. Based on all the discussion and here earlier tonight, there is substantial natural vegetation out there. We would be willing to shorten the berm, spot locate some of the trees using the same material count, and enhance some of the plantings along the along the east side as Dave suggested in his report. In addition, I think there was a discussion with regards to adding a screen wall, an extension of the rear wall of the building. The north wall would extend to the west to the limits of the service drive to the overhead door. So that could probably be about a 30 or 40 foot wall, approximately 6 feet tall, same materials as the building is. So in talking with Glenn about that, that is something that would be reasonable to do. In terms of building materials, we have sample boards in front of us. Again, the color scheme. Do you want me to pick that up? Can you see that up?
It's probably just going
The materials are the same colors as on the KFC. The brick, however, will be full-face brick. Orange brick. On KFC, you might recall, you took the waiver or a variation of your materials and this will be full-face brick. It's the same manufacturer, it's the same colors. So our anchor of the building is this brown around the base of the building. And we're using the tan brick on some of the columns. And then we have some accent trim colors that all blend nicely with the brick. And then the shingle is a residential type shingle, column and crest, all these colors. Architecturally, we wanted to design a building that is sort of residential look in nature and can act as a further buffer transition between the residents and the fast food use. I think with that, I'll be happy to open it up to the Planning Commission and answer any questions.
All right, I think what we'll do is we'll grab the planning director's letter here dated October 1st again, and we'll look to the packet page number 75. A lot of these answers are already yes, so no additional traffic, dimensional requirements, lot size we're okay on. Probably talk about this screening and all that and natural vegetation when we get to that point. Frontage we're okay on, building setbacks we're okay on. Building height, yes. Lot coverage, yes. Site requirements, no new dumpster. Just sharing the one with KFC.
Correct.
Stop me if you've got any comments, Planning Commission. Off-street parking. Dave, could we defer to you on this one?
Yes. So the per strict application of our minimum parking standards, they would be required 9 spaces. And what they're proposing is 7 spaces with potential for we say 4, but I guess it's 3 deferred spaces. This is something that was discussed in a concept meeting with the applicant when he brought in our office, the proposal for the office building. I believe at that point he was thinking he was going to meet his minimum parking requirements by adding some parking to the west side of the building. And our thought in meeting in that concept meeting was let's not provide any extra parking that we agree probably isn't needed for this office building until that need arises. So what the applicant is proposing is to keep the parking on the south side of the building, again, as you're going to keep hearing me say, minimize to the extent we can any impacts to the residential development north. And what the applicant is showing is the 7 spaces with the opportunity for 3 more should the need arise to the east. The Planning Commission does have the discretion to allow for deferred parking in a case where it can be demonstrated that, meeting the township's typical parking minimums wouldn't be optimal. And I think this is one of those cases.
Well, obviously the applicant feels that way because that's what you proposed.
We run probably 3 to 4 people at our office 3 to 4 days a week. So, we had originally had those parking spaces on there, but again, to help with screening of, the neighborhood back there, there's no point to put those parking spaces in. We really,
What we have to be cognizant of is if this someday off in the future is no longer Mr. Floing's office, but he sells it as some other office building, insurance office, whatever it may be, we at least know that there's an opportunity to put in the additional minimum parking if and when that day comes.
So that's where we show the dashed line and the deferred parking.
Correct.
Everybody fine with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're good. Barrier-free parking, we're good. Parking lot, driveway, internal roads, we're all good on. Loading, let's talk about a 12-foot service drive and a T turnaround. So you're acceptable to a 12-foot drive?
yeah, we're not going to use that driveway that much, and it would only be myself. So, I don't need a turnaround or, I don't need it to be 24 feet wide either.
They showed 24 feet because that is our minimum for a commercial driveway. Again, the Planning Commission can deviate from that on a case-by-case basis, and I think there's a fair case to be made that this doesn't need to be a full-width, 24-foot wide, two-way driveway.
It's not really a driveway to me.
Right.
So, are you guys okay with 12-foot?
Yeah, especially there's enough room that we need it to come in compliance later. Can
All
enough
right.
room to do that. Yes.
Okay. And no turnaround? Do you T turnaround? You guys okay without that? Okay. No T turnaround. Nothing new on access management, landscape screening. I guess this is probably where we're going to talk about we're talking about Greenbelt at this point. The restaurant's already taken care of that. Foundation planning looks like they're meeting it. Parking lot landscaping is yes. Perimeter landscaping, this is where we're going to talk about the berm and everything at the back, I assume. Dave?
So the perimeter landscaping is around the perimeter of the parking lot. Our suggestion was, if there might be an opportunity to take one or more of these trees and perhaps put them in this area to kind of provide a little bit more greening from the view shed coming from this area down to the parking lot. This area behind the detention pond, even though it wasn't disturbed back in this area as part of the KFC construction, it is relatively sparse, just naturally so. So we do think there's an opportunity to plug in maybe one or more of these gaps through here to screen the view of this parking lot from, I guess, what would be the northeast.
You guys okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
How about the berm? Do we want to discuss that?
Yeah, it's coming right up. The detention pond, no changes. Correct, Dave?
I think so. Mr. Beckett, can you confirm that the size of the detention pond was sized to adequately take on this additional stormwater from this parking expansion and
Yes,
this additional shingled roof?
It was adequately sized and actually slightly over-constructed. So
Okay.
we're in the process right now of doing an as-built survey out there.
Yes.
And just the preliminary findings are that we have ample stormwater.
So I think the only way we would determine that they need additional detention pond landscaping would be if they, for some reason, had to expand that detention pond, which and I think our engineer concurs, they would not need to do as part of this addition.
Okay. Item F, screening of residential districts. So you guys want to modify what you've proposed?
Well, we walked it, and then after talking to Dave, the west part of that berm is so thick of woods, we weren't, I don't know if we should disturb that or not. It actually, if we do the berm, we're actually making it less shielded from the houses, because that part is so thick you can't see through it like at all.
If you look on the site plan and extend the new west driveway line straight north to the residential.
Yeah, I'm following
You
you.
got a pointer?
Thanks.
Back.
Is shown.
Thank you.
It is. They're not. So they're saying.
If you extend this curb line straight north, that's in line with the property line between these two houses. At that point, there's a couple of oak trees that are a little bit offset, but that line generally is where there's heavy screening existing already, and then it kind of filters and it gets fairly light over on the east edge. Looking at it like that, it would make more sense to kind of spot trees within that area rather than just bulldoze and create a new berm in that area. So I think it would take several years to recover from constructing a berm and planting trees on it.
Yeah, I mean, those trees are huge that are there. I mean,
Well, I think staff concurs. I think if we could maintain the same quantity of trees being proposed along here, but avoid the berming at least up to that area more or less, then we're not hauling in a bunch of dirt and taking out the vegetation to replace it with a berm. We can spot plant this same quantity of trees and then start the berm right about here where this good stand of existing vegetation peters off, and then create the berm from about this line all the way to close to the east property line.
well, and our thinking is we don't want to cut any trees out, but take those trees that should be in the west and push them all to the east to make sure it's just as thick all the way along back there, because the west, for whatever reason, that is so thick. You know, we push all those trees over there, then we'll be thick the whole way along.
So he's saying something different than you said, Dave. You said take the berm out, but leave the trees and spot them. He's saying take the berm out, take the trees out that were there, and move them to the east.
Well,
I think he's talking about the ones on the drawing.
Yeah, I'm talking about the trees to be
The new
planted.
trees.
The new trees.
The new stuff, right.
Yeah, but what we're saying is you might want to still plant some new trees on that western portion.
Yeah, spotted.
Yeah, spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
To fill gaps and things like that.
Right. Get some evergreen
Yeah.
trees in there too, because you're right, but it's all deciduous.
It's a lot of deciduous.
Our 6 months of no leaves.
Right. So Dave has 3 points in this particular topic. Some variation in the height of the evergreen should be considered, since they're all proposed to be 8-footers. I need to go back and read the ordinance, because I know that we require a variation in height. I thought it was 8, 10, 12 after the last applicant said no, and it's got me questioning it. But
And this is, of course, the one meeting where I forgot to bring my copy of the ordinance.
all right. So you all right with 8, 10, 12?
the 12 is a bit of a stretch, but
Okay.
I believe the ordinance is 8 foot as well. I think 8 and 10s would be fine. And then, when you plant this on a berm, you have a 3-foot berm, so you're going to have some trees on the lower end of the berm, and you'll
Okay.
have some in the middle. So that's going to provide some variation from.
So go 50-50, 8 and 10s? You guys okay with that? Sure. Okay. The second point, Dave, have increased the number of evergreen trees on the eastern half of the berm? Is that because we're thinking there is a lot less natural vegetation in that area?
Correct. And Now, part of the conversation may be if they're spot planting some of these and it's determined that whatever this quantity is in this area where I'm moving my cursor, if there's really no good spaces to spot plant those, then shift those, further to the east and get them over here more. I think at a minimum we want to maintain the quantity of plantings through this berm and have some flexibility with where they actually, get planted. In our estimation, it's still, there's still an opportunity to maybe beef up this one corner right there. I mean, obviously the berm's tapering off right there, so they would have to, deal with the slopes of the berm. But I just felt there was an opportunity to get a few more plantings in there to really provide the screening that we're looking for.
Can you add a couple?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Happy.
And it may be a matter of either adding them or just relocating.
Right.
Okay, so we already talked about .3 in the berm on the eastern half. So any other questions on the screening? Any thoughts, comments? You guys okay? Okay. General site landscaping, back to Dave.
There is a requirement of an additional 25% of landscaping above and beyond what's otherwise required. And I believe what the applicant would contend is that preserving as much of the existing vegetation as they are proposing to do satisfies that additional 25% requirement.
I would agree. You agree?
Yeah, you're referring here to the east side, though, and we discussed that, right? That you take a couple from the west.
Yeah, in addition to everything we've already covered.
Right.
Do they need to find areas throughout the site for an additional 25% additional plantings? And I think their contention would be by preserving the vegetation that's there, they're satisfying the intent there.
I would agree.
I agree.
Everybody good with that? Okay. All right, we're down sidewalks. Nothing changes. Part of the restaurant. Lighting. Dave, what do we need to talk about in lighting?
So,
If I can, is there a sidewalk between the building and the restaurant per se?
No, sir, there's not.
Not.
We don't really anticipate a lot of direct foot traffic between the two. I think the fast food use is, separate and independent of the office use.
So the plan isn't, when you have your training, the plan isn't to use the restaurant as the training for the employees that are in there?
No, generally we do the training inside the office. Yeah. We would probably not walk over to the restaurant.
Okay.
we looked at it, and the thought too was that to provide a sidewalk connection, maybe through here perhaps, or on this side, you're impacting the landscaping that we're doing our best to maximize.
So, Dave, we need some
lighting.
comments on the lighting from
Yes,
you here.
we have minimums for the illumination levels at various components of the site. It has to be at a certain minimum at your building entrance. It has to be at a separate minimum for your parking lot, and another minimum for your entrance. In general, there's a couple dim spots in this parking lot, but that's not, again, by design. When we had conversations with the applicant, we asked them to keep the parking lot lighting on the south side of the building and to keep it at a height where the building itself would be taller than the lighting. Again, to do everything possible to screen that additional parking lot lighting and the existing parking lot lighting from the neighborhood. So even though the parking lot in through here gets a little bit below our minimums, the Planning Commission does have the authority to allow that, and the justification would be, again, we don't want to overlight the site, especially for a 9 to 5 office use that is, as we've heard, not going to be getting a lot of nighttime use anyway.
Am I understanding that there's no lighting on the building at all?
There's no wall sconces on the building. We will have some soffit lighting on the west and south elevations that would wash the wall a little bit, as well as provide sufficient lighting for the sidewalks.
Right, we're trying not to make it very bright.
I understand. I just, for security reasons and in case there's any emergency incident in the middle of the night, you never know. Plus the winter hours is dark early and dark late, it stays dark late in the morning.
Yeah,
And I mean, you could put a motion detector and still have lighting. I appreciate what you're trying to do. I'm just concerned about.
well, and we talked about that actually today, and then we were worried about the animals. What we don't want is motion lights going off and then the people in the neighborhood getting upset because animals are setting off these security lights when we're trying to not have a lot of light.
Animals, you mean like?
I mean, we can add light, but we're...
Well,
It may be
sconce lights, I didn't even realize you had that, so I guess that's better than what I
The
thought.
soffit lights.
Soffit lights, I'm sorry.
Yeah. That would be built into the overhang of the building, and then
Right, we figured that gave us sufficient light and
Okay.
wouldn't upset the neighbors, at the same time.
Okay. Tom, did you have something to add?
So this is on the, so the main entrance is on the south side of the building?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those lights, if there were lights there for safety, Keith's idea, they wouldn't probably bother the neighbors as much, especially if they were on a motion sensor. Unless you're, when you say animals,
Right, animals would
You
set
mean
them off or anything.
like a raccoon or something?
Yeah.
I'm sounding through, oh, okay, yeah, I don't know how sensitive they are.
And they did say they do have soffit lighting on those elevations, so.
Right. So there is lighting out there. Plus
Yeah,
the
so
parking lot's right there.
Yeah.
So soffit lights are located in the area of the door that if you did walk up with your keys, then you're going to...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, all across the south elevation and then down the west elevation, because there is an exterior sidewalk that connects between those two service areas.
Everybody good with that?
Any lighting at all on the north side?
Nothing on the north or
Nothing on
the
north
east.
or the east.
Okay. Fixture height looks like we're okay. Fixture type, to be determined, condition suggested.
Yeah, just a typical cut sheet on the lighting plan that shows really everything all at once: the fixture height, the fixture color, the fixture type.
Probably had it on the KFC plan.
Perhaps
Probably could cut it off. And
I guess the only difference here is this is a different height. The
Okay.
KFC lights are what, 20 or 25. These are
I think
16.
I think these are 16.
Yep.
Same type of light fixture, but
We just lowered it
Yep.
so it wouldn't be bright.
the building itself is approximately 21 feet tall to the pit to the ridge. So there should be no light source seen from the neighborhood.
Okay.
There's plenty of empty space on your illumination plan, so if we could just drop in a fixture detail.
Okay. Water supply disposal, nothing different. DPW director's letter there. Walls and fences.
We discussed this is as good as any. And I think the applicant has already said that they're willing to work with it. We're suggesting a wing wall that would go at least from this corner of the building as far out as the service drive, 6 feet tall perhaps, to match the building, just to screen any headlights. If Mr. Flewelling or anyone else is coming back here with their headlights on, they're not shining them back into these folks' backyards. So a 6-foot brick wall to match the building.
So we're thinking the same base and then the other brick on top and then some kind of a concrete cap on it,
Yeah,
limestone looking cap?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we're good with that.
You guys good with that? I think it'd be a nice addition. Architecture, building materials, anybody got any comments? Looks like they're pretty much, for the most part, in compliance.
Close.
Thoughts on it? Appreciate the residential flair to it, I will agree with that.
We
That's
figured
nice.
that would be a good buffer.
Well, the building itself buffers your restaurant from the residential.
Well,
I think
that's
it's a nice
correct.
transition.
Yeah.
Any comments on architecture? You guys all good with it?
Good.
Everybody? All right. So signage, no signage is needed?
I think you mentioned maybe just a moderate signage on the windows, just some etched.
Oh, well, yeah, it'll just say our address,
Right.
and then, Lucky Dining, but I
Yeah.
mean, no signage. We don't
Right.
need any signage or anything.
Okay.
Nothing out at the road, no additions to
No.
the monument sign?
Okay.
Put a big Colonel statue out there.
Yeah, two of
Chicken
them
leg.
we can get.
Big boy.
Yeah.
All the DPW engineer, fire authority, MDOT letters, anything, anybody have any questions or comments on them? If not, what would you like to do with this site plan this evening? if you're so inclined.
Move to approve site plan application number 537 for a KFC office building to be situated on the KFC restaurant parcel located on M59 east of Clark Road, conditional upon the following. 1, Planning Commission approval of architectural facade waiver for the slight deviation of materials, minimums and maximums of Section 5.24, so long as the wing wall is provided for additional screening of lights and noise. And number 2, approval of deferred parking requests for 4 spaces in order to minimize impacts on the adjacent residential properties. Number 3, administrative review of a revised lighting plan with addresses, which addresses the issues noted in the Planning Department's review letter. And number 4, administrative review of a revised landscape plan, which addresses the direction provided by the Planning Commission on October 8th, 2015. Administrative review of a revised site plan, which addresses the direction provided by the Planning Commission and the Planning Department, including revisions of the dimensions of proposed service drive and compliance with all requirements of the Fire Marshal, DPD Director, and Township Engineer on the revised submittals.
Got a second on that?
Yep, I'll support that.
All right, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Voigt, second from Commissioner Newsom. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just got to ask you, how's business?
Good.
Is it?
Yeah. It's starting to come back down to earth now.
Yeah?
Yeah. It turned out great. Building looks fantastic.
Yeah.
So.
It's a very pretty site.
Yeah. All your, we took all your input and look what happened.
There you go.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Item 9 is call to the public. Call to the public. I was waiting for you.
Thank you. I'm Heidi Meisterfeld. I still live on Matthew Court. I have a couple questions. It's more for the owners of KFC. I live far enough away from KFC that I don't notice it except for maybe like one time a week. There's a smell that's emanating from the restaurant, and the homeowners that back up to it say they smell it every single day. I know restaurants emanate smells. That's normal. As I told you before, I worked in restaurants for 20 years. I owned my own business. I'm quite familiar with oil. I'm just wondering if there's something that we can do to maybe put a fan up there. I don't know if the exhaust fan is facing the sub. If we could turn it around and have it face M59 so it breaks up those particles more. It is not quite grease trap smell. No, we're not there, but it is really strong. I live about a block and a half away, and I smell it about once a week. But if you take a walk during business hours, you will smell it almost every single day. And it's quite strong. So, like I said, the neighbors have come to me and said, hey, can you say something? So here I am. Is it something you guys could look at or think about or put on the...
I'm not sure. The exhaust fans are all built a specific way that are on top of the building.
Right, but I'm just wondering if the chute, if it's going towards...
Why, you guys could chat about that.
Okay,
After.
Great. I said that's all I wanted to say. If you guys could look into it, think about it, something. My last thing I wanted to bring up was about the ordinances. I'm glad that you were talking with Mug and Bob's about trees and trying to protect this, and that is greatly appreciated. What I am curious about is why some ordinances are more important than others, because I have come to you many meetings about zoning and ordinances, and some are just, well, we're just going to abate that, or it doesn't need to be this wide, or it doesn't need to be that bright. I mean, ordinances are in place to be followed, and I understand that sometimes things take over, but you are more concerned with what types of trees are being put in and the color of the mulch and the color of the rocks than the drive-through coming into our homes. What was the word he used? A substantial traffic coming through between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. So, I mean, I'm just, that's what I'm concerned about. Why is it some things are really more important than others? I think a law or an ordinance should be followed. It shouldn't be abated Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move, close call to the public, move to the planner report.
Have a good night, guys.
What's that?
It's to you.
Yeah. Spent the last couple days at the annual planning conference in Detroit at the RenCen, and lots of good sessions and lots of good information. And one more day of it tomorrow, and if anybody wants to tag along, let me know. The Township Board at their meeting this past Tuesday took a look at the Newberry Place, the concept plan for Newberry Place, the preliminary PD plan for Walnut Ridge Estates, and moved that one, gave that one approval, so hopefully that one will be back in front of the Planning Commission for final. And then with Fiddler Grove, which is Chestnut Development, opted not to take any action, but the board is going to be having a special meeting again this Tuesday, and if the applicant can turn around some revisions to their development agreement, he'll be back on that agenda this Tuesday. There were some issues with kind of the timing and the phasing of the water main connection to Autumn Woods, and kind of firming up the commitment there. So if the applicant can satisfy what the board was looking for, then that has the potential to get approved at the special meeting this Tuesday.
Well, it had to do with our attorney. Looking at the language and
It did. I mean, the development agreement is a contract between the developer and the township, and it wasn't firm enough about what the developer's obligations are with that water main if certain things don't fall into place. So hopefully we'll get that firmed up. That's all I can think of to bring up as part of my off-the-cuff planner's report.
All right, so do we have any committee reports, comments, anyone?
Just want to, Joe, a comment, I guess, or a question. What was the board's general opinion of the special planning area, the way it's concepted?
there was, I saw almost everybody had a positive comment about the Newberry Place. But, and there was a lot of discussion. I brought up the architectural issues, not issues, but the architectural aspects of it. And the applicant was very helpful in explaining what, that this is going to be very similar to what had been planned for that area for a very long time. And he's taken some of those concepts, but actually I think improved on them with the selection of his architect.
Plus less dense.
And it's less dense. Not by
It is. Yes, quite a bit, actually.
But overall, there was a positive feel from the board. The one thing we're going to need to talk about is a little bit about the public benefit.
Recognizable benefit.
Recognizable benefit that we need to start thinking about what we're going to look at that. I don't know how that works. We kind of wait for them to kind of propose something.
Usually through the attorney.
Yeah, maybe our attorney can suggest completing some of the pathways between here and there. That would be a great recognizable benefit, since we weren't able to do that with the road plan.
Or maybe pay for
At least.
Maybe I should talk to him.
If I just real quick, one of the many phone calls that I'm going to have to return, having been out the last couple of days, was the assisted living partner on that Mayberry plan. They want to move ahead with theirs, and they want to kind of get in there before they come back with preliminary, which is fine procedurally. So by the time we see the preliminary plan, we'll know more about the assisted living component, which I think is going to be a memory care. Have a memory care part to it too.
I have one.
Yeah, go right
ahead. Is there anything that we can do, Dave, that it seems like every applicant now has so much trouble with landscaping? We spend a lot of our time at the meetings landscaping. Is it they're not listening to you guys? Is it that their landscape architecture doesn't get involved soon enough? Are they trying to design something and figuring they're going to talk us into what they want? I don't understand, why is it so difficult for them?
Part of the answer is that there's certain things that do require a planning commission determination, such as you shall put in a 6-foot wall unless the planning commission is looking for something else. So that's why we spent a lot of discussion on, if it's not going to be a 6-foot wall, then what is it going to be? And that's the way our zoning ordinance is structured, is there's a lot of things, and particularly with landscaping, where the planning commission does have the discretion to make some deviations or to accept less landscaping so long as they preserve the existing vegetation. So because you do have that much discretion, then it does require some conversations, and obviously we had a lot of those discussions
Yeah,
tonight.
and I can understand that, but there's still a lot of the smaller things that they seem to be missing. I don't, you know, it's like it's like the beds, you know, mulch versus stone, and is it?
We have a substantial landscaping requirement section, and I can, as someone who has to review them, I can sympathize that it's sometimes things can get missed.
Okay, I didn't want to point any fingers or anything. I just
You can point a finger at me,
No,
it's fine.
I was trying to figure out if there a way that we could have them come a little more prepared, what it would take.
Okay. Anything else? We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
That would be Kalani and Grissom. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.